Zhang Laoshe, I don't have sufficient money to pay for the frigid sun mother grass now, so I will pay you a portion first. Treat it as our Bayou City buying it from you. After all, we can't expect you to go bankrupt while teaching Xiaojie. Xiaojie young mistress oblivious to the changes that had occurred in Zhangxian, Yao Han stepped forward to pass over banknotes worth 20,000 in total. There's no need for it. It's just a medicinal herb, it's just a small affair. Zhangxian shook his head. The responsibility of a teacher had just dawned on him, so how could he accept money from a student at this moment? Furthermore, it was just a stalk of frigid sun mother grass. Frigid sun grass was only worth 100 gold coins per stalk, so a frigid sun mother grass shouldn't be worth much either. His fortune counted in the millions, so why would he bother about that petty sum? Furthermore, he obtained this stalk by acting cool, not even spending the least bit of money on it. His heart didn't ache giving it away like this. Upon seeing his resolute determination, Yao Han could only keep his money. Feeling impressed, he commented, Zhang Laoshe, I'm really impressed by your generosity. To give a herb worth 100,000 gold coins just like that, it's laughable that I've thought that you were trying to scam our Xiaojie. What? Worth 100,000 gold coins? Zhang Xian's lips quivered. This frigid sun mother grass is worth 100,000 gold coins. Are you for real? If I knew that it was worth 100,000 gold coin, I should have accepted your money. Other people gave presents to their teachers in a show of filial piety, so why was it that when it came to him, he was paying them instead? Yes. Yao Han looked over with a peculiar expression. Could it be that Zhang Laoshe doesn't know of its price? Even though his heart was bleeding, he knew that he couldn't retract his words at this point. As such, he assumed a stern face once more. With an arrogant aura that treated all worldly objects contemptuously, he said, Of course not, money means nothing to me at all. Xiaoye is my student, and a herb worth 100,000 gold coins is but a small matter. If it's beneficial to her, there's no need to hesitate over mere money. Since what's done is done, he could only go ahead and sell her the favor. Xiaojie has truly found a good teacher. Seeing his attitude, Yao Han was truly in awe of him. No wonder Xiaojie kept praising him. Just his morals itself is sufficient to send others in awe like me. Standing by the side, Wen Shui looked on the situation in embarrassment. If only there was a burrow here, she would have dived in immediately. The other party was such an upstanding and noble teacher, yet she mistook him as a pursuer of hers, treating him disdainfully. Her actions were truly laughable. Thankfully, he had a generous heart and was indifferent to her rudeness. Otherwise, his identity as an apprentice apothecary was more than sufficient to have her permanently expelled. Let's return. I have to prepare for the pill debate tomorrow as well. A single act had cost him 100,000 gold coins. Besides, the money wasn't anything much. After all, Bayou City was paying for it, not Xiaoye. Suppressing the urge to cry, Zhang Xian walked out to the streets. By the time he returned to the academy after having dinner, it was already nearing midnight. Since I'm not tired yet, I should look into how I can break into Pixue realm. In his previous life, he was a nocturnal owl. Furthermore, given his level of cultivation, his physical condition was much better than how it was back then. Even though it was already late at night, he wasn't tired in the least. After exposing the might of a Pixue realm expert in the Enlightenment will Tower today, the Academy should be making a move soon to confer him the title of an elder. Upon becoming an elder, he would be granted entry into the Elders' Compendium Pavilion. By then, he would be able to obtain sufficient Fighter 6 Dan's secret manuals to perfect his Heaven's Path divine art. Of course, before then, studying it was okay as well. After all, he had duplicated quite a few secret manuals from Master Lu Chen's residence. Even though only a partial of the words were true and as such, unable to be linked together to form a complete version, it was still worth studying. With a jolt of his mind, a dozen books or so which he saw in Master Lu Chen's residence appeared in his consciousness. Actually, Pixue realm cultivation isn't very difficult. The only difficulty one will face is the sequence of breaking through the acupoints. After scanning through the numerous manuals, Zhang Xian came to a realization. It is said that there are 108 acupoints on a human body. However, only 72 of which can be opened. Furthermore, there is a specific sequence to opening these acupoints. Everyone's physical body is different, and as such, there is a different sequence for everyone to follow to achieve optimal results. If one didn't find the correct route, it's likely that they might only be able to open 30 to 40 acupoints and be stuck there for the rest of their lives. It's just like cleansing the silt and mud off a river. Only by cleansing from the upper stream can the river be cleansed entirely. If one were to start from the center, not only will the river not be cleaned thoroughly, it may even cause a blockade. This is precisely the reason why the first acupoint to open is important. If one were to get it wrong, it will have disastrous repercussions. This book Golden Flame Technique says that the first acupoint to open should be the Shinli acupoint. Only with strength can one break through the other more important acupoints. On the other hand, this art of sun adaptation says that one should start from the Zhongshu acupoint because it is in the direct center of the human body. The acupoint one should start with was different in every single book, and each of their reasoning seemed logical. Others might end up becoming confused upon reading through all these, but Zhang Xian possessed the library of Heaven's Path. With but a single glance, he knew that all of it were false. Being unable to find the correct acupoint is equivalent to being unable to find the source of a river. If an error was to occur from the very start, it would be difficult to push on afterward. Forget it. After studying for a moment longer, Zhang Xian realized that none of the manuals held the correct answer to the first acupoint he should break through. Just when he was about to give up, an idea popped up in his mind. If what is recorded in all these books are false, and given that a human only has 108 acupoints in total, if I were to try them one by one, wouldn't I be able to figure out the sequence of which I should open up my acupoints? The method to break through acupoints was simple, one just had to use their jinqi to surge through it. The main problem was the sequence to doing so. Since these were all wrong, of the 108 acupoints in his body, there had to be a correct one. Other people might be unable to try them one by one, but such a problem didn't exist for him. As he possessed the library of Heaven's Path, after eliminating all mistakes, what was left should be naturally correct. Give it a try. At this point, Zhang Xian didn't hesitate any further. Picking up a brush and paper, he wrote out the 108 acupoints on a human body out and cancelled away the incorrect first acupoints from the various secret manuals from it, followed by the other acupoints that were proven to be in the correct positions for him in the sequence listed in the books. After which, only 20 acupoints were left of the 108. However, there was no need to worry. Zhang Xian hand-copied a manual and alternated the 20 acupoints in the first acupoint within the sequence one by one. Vying. A new secret manual appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path, displaying the errors and flaws of it. At his 13th try, his mind jolted and the secret manual reflected the first acupoint that had no flaws. Ha, I've succeeded. To think that it would be the Xingxiao acupoint. Since the Library of Heaven's Path has not pointed out any errors in it, it means that this is the first acupoint I should break through to enter Pixue realm. Xingxiao acupoint is a hidden acupoint in a human body. Without pure jinqi, it's impossible for a fighter 5 Dan pinnacle to open it. No wonder it isn't written in any of these manuals. After verifying the first acupoint he had to open, Zhang Xian was filled with excitement. Xingxiao acupoint was located in the depths of one's heart. It was reputed as one of the 36 locked acupoints. Without sufficiently pure jinqi, not only would one be unable to open it, one's cultivation might even go berserk while attempting to open it. If not for the verification by the Library of Heaven's Path, he would have never believed that this would be the first acupoint he needed to open. It was no wonder that he was unable to find the correct sequence in the manuals he duplicated. To think that the correct acupoint for him to start with was one of the locked acupoints. From the looks of it now, even though it was termed as locked acupoint, but with the correct sequence, one would be able to break it open. Let's begin. Everything else went easy after discovering the correct acupoint. The method to breaking them open was about the same. Without much hesitation, Zhang Xian directed the Zhenqi in his body towards the Xinqiao acupoint. Boom! Not long after, there was a loud explosion and Zhang Xian's body swayed uncontrollably. Instantaneously, Zhang Xian felt a qualitative improvement in his mental state. Regardless of whether it was his vitality or his reaction speed, they improved by leaps and bounds. He had successfully broken through Fighter 6 Dan Pixue realm. If he closed his eyes at this instant, he could sense radiance emitting from an acupoint within his body, like a star in the middle of a dark night. Goo goo goo. With the acupoint opened, spiritual energy immediately gushed in, inducing a rise in his strength by a single ding. Great! Sensing the changes in his body, Zhang Xian knew that he had successfully accomplished a breakthrough to the next realm. Even without cultivation technique manuals, I can always try to fumble around for the correct part by experimenting with every single possibility. Even if there are 10,000 possible routes in my cultivation, as long as I toss out all of the erroneous ones, I will eventually find the correct one. His eyes twinkled with excitement. It was just a conjecture he came up with abruptly, so he didn't really expect to succeed. Of course, such a method was only possible for Pixue realm. There was a total of 108 acupoints in the human body and they were all fixed in place. Thus, it was possible for him to try them one by one. However, if he really tried to create a cultivation technique of his own out of nowhere, even with the Library of Heaven's Path, he would surely tire himself to death. Actually, Zhang Xian didn't know that the reputation for the 36 locked acupoints didn't come from nowhere. Without the purest Zhenqi, it was impossible for one to break open the acupoints. Using a simple analogy, if the other acupoints are paths, the 36 locked acupoints are pinhole-sized paths. Impure Zhenqi is like muddy water. Even though it can flow through the other paths with ease, it is an impossible task for it to pass through the pinhole-sized paths. Just the silt in the muddy water itself is sufficient to plug up the path. If one tries to break through it forcefully, they might end up crushing their acupoint instead, causing an imbalance in their body, and ultimately, death. Zhang Xian cultivated the flawless Heaven's Path divine art and his Zhenqi had no impurities in it whatsoever, like completely pure water. Even when facing pinhole-sized paths, it could easily pass through to break open the acupoint successfully. I should continue with the second acupoint. With a single successful experience, Zhang Xian continued to look for the second acupoint. After a while, the second acupoint was successfully opened as well. The hardest part of the Pixue realm was in finding the correct sequence to open the acupoints. As long as one found it, breaking through the Pixue realm was an extremely easy task. Zhao Ye's residence. Yao Han was sitting at a distance not too far away from Zhao Ye. Xiaojie, tell me about this Zhang Laoshe and your physical condition. Why do you need to consume the medicinal herb? Initially, he was prejudiced against Zhang Xian, but after seeing him put himself in peril for his students and gifting a medicinal herb worth 100,000 gold coins so casually, he couldn't help but doubt the notions he had of him. His actions might be a facade, but that tranquil and nonchalant aura of his and that disposition of an enlightened expert couldn't be feigned. How could one who possessed such aura, disposition, and morals possibly be a villain who fooled women? Looked like he had been mistaken from the very start. Furthermore, Xiaojie had been healthy all along. Why did she need to consume this medicinal herb? Not to mention, such an expensive and valuable one. Filled with doubt, he couldn't help but bring them up upon reaching her residence. Zhang Laoshe initially, I was prejudiced against him as well until I saw his capabilities personally and listened to his lectures. Zhao Ye started to recount everything that happened ever since she met Zhang Xian. Upon speaking about her physical illness, her face flushed red. In the past, she would definitely be too embarrassed to speak of it. She would wonder if she had problems with her innate nature and her body. However, upon getting the truth of the matter from Zhang Laoshe, she managed to get past that barrier of hers. For a person possessing pure yin body to cultivate a pure yin cultivation technique, it resulted in yin energy accumulating in her body, and if not for her outstanding mental resilience, she would have given in long ago. Pure yin body. Xiaojie has pure yin body. To think that we were unaware of that. We even made you cultivate the white jade pure maiden skill. Upon hearing the symptoms and pain the girl had undergone throughout the years, Yao Han's face paled. He was of the same generation as Xiaoya's father, and he had long seen Xiaoya as his own daughter. If not for Zhang Laoshi seeing through to the crux of the problem, Xiaojia might still be trapped in the quagmire of pain, unable to pull herself out of it. Unable to see through this all despite being a senior who had been beside her all this time, he felt intense self-reproach and remorse. Back at the Apothecary Guild, he had heard her say that she had a unique constitution. Back then, it wasn't convenient for him to ask about it. Never in his dreams would he imagine that it was of this kind, and that such after-effects would occur upon cultivation a pure yin cultivation technique. Since this Zhang Laoshi is so capable, why would his reputation be so? After listening to the words of the young girl, this Zhang Laoshi seemed to be an incredible figure of great capabilities. However, if he were that incredible, his reputation should have long ago rung far and wide. Why would the results of his investigation be that he had failed the teacher qualification examination and even caused a student's cultivation to go berserk? Today, due to Lu Yang's affair, the Education Bureau conducted an Enlightenment Will trial. Xiaoya went on to talk about the incident that occurred at the Enlightenment Will Tower. What? You mean it was due to Elder Shang Chen's intentional oppression that his reputation is so poor? Zhang Laoshi, in consideration for the image of the academy, didn't expose him. His strength is already that of Pixue realm pinnacle. Yao Han shuddered. If he didn't hear this news firsthand, he would have never believed it. For the head of the Education Bureau of an established academy to be so shameless. On the other hand, for Zhang Laoshi to be such a noble person. Looked like he was indeed mistaken. Not just him, everyone was mistaken about him. I have never seen Elder Shang Chen, but Shang bin Laoshi, who is his grandson, is interest-motivated and vicious. Naturally, his grandfather can't be any better. If anyone else heard such rumors about the head of the Education Bureau, they would definitely doubt the reliability of the news. However, Yao Han didn't have the slightest hesitation in believing Xiaoya's words. He had never met Shang Chen, but he had met Shang Bin. The wounds on his face were the doing of the other party. Since the grandson was of such character, how noble can the grandfather be? Birds of the same feathers flock together. Uncle Yao, now that you know about Zhang Laoshi's affairs, I hope that you can be more respectful to him from now on. After concluding her explanation, Xiaoya looked at Yao Han with a grim expression. Rest assured. Your uncle isn't a foolish person. I know what to do from now on. Yao Han nodded his head. The next instant, his expression darkened. The authoritativeness and self-confidence of the butler of a powerful family exuded from him as he continued. However, this Shang Chen and Shang Bin had caused me to bear misunderstandings about Zhang Laoshi, not to mention how they soiled his reputation. I must converse with the city lord and have them punished. Yeah. Such vile people deserve to be punished. Xiaoya nodded her head. She was unlike Wang Ying. Wang Ying had a docile and honest nature while she, as the daughter of a city lord, possessed a valiant disposition. Otherwise, she wouldn't have barged into Zhang Xian's classroom angrily upon hearing others praise him. This was precisely the reason why, upon hearing Yao Han say that he would teach the duo a lesson, she didn't hesitate and immediately nodded her head in agreement. If not for this head of the Education Bureau, Zhang Laoshi wouldn't suffer such injustice and be viewed mockingly and contemptuously by the rest of the world. Otherwise, given his capabilities, how could he possibly be unable to recruit any students? They must be taught a lesson, and a severe one at that, one that will send their reputation down the drain. Uncle Yao, I will be troubling you to spread this information. The more people know of it, the better. At this, Xiaoya issued a command. Yes. Yao Han nodded his head. Pipa. Pilai Pala. Throughout the entire night, the sound of him breaking through in his cultivation could be heard every now and then as his strength soared continuously. To think that the night would be over in a flash. Finally, Zhang Xian opened his eyes. The sun had already risen. Despite going without sleep the entire night, not only did Zhang Xian not feel fatigued, he even felt revitalized instead. With the level of purity of his Jinqi and the uniqueness of his Heaven's Path divine art, breaking through his cultivation realm was an extremely easy task. It was just that it took time for him to identify the correct acupoints. Even so, in a single night, he had opened over 20 acupoints. Going by conventional standards, a fighter could only open 72 acupoints in their entire body. Every 18 acupoints opened was considered a tier. That was to say if one opened 1 to 18 acupoints, he was in Pixue realm primary stage, 19 to 36 acupoints for the intermediate stage, 37 to 54 for advanced stage and 55 to 72 for pinnacle. However, due to the low purity of Jinqi that most people possessed and incorrect sequence they opened their acupoints in, the cultivation of most people stopped progressing after opening 30 to 40 acupoints. The only way for them to grow stronger was to try to break through Fighter 7 Dan Tongxian realm. As a result, the classification above remained in theory. Based on Tianxian Kingdom standards, Pixue realm basic stage was classified as opening 1 to 10 acupoints, intermediate stage 11 to 20, advanced 21 to 30, and pinnacle 31 and above. As long as one opened 31 acupoints and above, regardless of whether it was 31 or 72, they were all considered as Pixue realm pinnacle in Tianxian Kingdom. When Zhang Xian was still at Dingli realm pinnacle, he already possessed 8 ding of strength. After recultivating his first 3 cultivation realms, his strength was boosted by 12 ding. Adding them up together, he possessed a total of 20 ding of strength before breaking into Pixue realm. After opening 20 acupoints, just taking into account Jinqi itself, he possessed 40 ding of strength. That was equivalent to a Pixue realm pinnacle expert. Other people had difficulty opening a single acupoint in the course of half a month while he opened 20 of it in a single night. Furthermore, 90% of the time was spent on researching the correct sequence. No one would be able to believe that it was possible for one's cultivation realm to soar that rapidly. However, if the flawless Heaven's Path divine art didn't have such effects, it wouldn't be worthy of the word perfect. After grabbing some food to eat, he headed to the classroom. You're saying that in order to find a way to awaken your unique constitution, Zhang Laoshi was willing to undergo pill debate to become an apothecary? In the classroom, Zhao Ye revealed what had happened yesterday to Wang Ying and the rest. Zhang Laoshi had created cultivation techniques for us, and now he is putting himself at risk for our welfare. No matter what, we must achieve good results in the freshman tournament. Otherwise, we would have truly let down Zhang Laoshi, and his efforts to groom us would be in vain. The eyes of Zheng Yang and the others burned passionately. Even the usually lazy Yuan Tao was agitated. Warriors died fighting to protect their soulmates. Zhang Laoshi had done so much to protect them. If they still knew none of the gratitude at this point, they would truly be ingrates. No, I have to start cultivating right now. Me too. In an instant, zeal consumed everyone and only a single goal retained in their minds. That was to bring glory to Zhang Laoshi by astonishing everyone with their strength in the freshman tournament. What is wrong with them all? Upon walking into the classroom, he saw that not only were all his students present, every single of them were cultivating seriously and diligently. Zhang Xian found the situation slightly queer. Was there something wrong with these fellows? Teacher. Just when he was about to start his lessons, he saw Wang Tao, Wang Yan, and Zhao Yanfeng walking over. Zhang Xian had already agreed to have Wang Tao and Wang Yan listen to by the side of the class. However, why was Zhao Yanfeng here too? I impertinently made my own decision to withdraw from Lu Laoshi's tutelage. If my decision had caused you trouble, please punish me. As soon as Zhang Xian walked into the classroom, Zhao Yanfeng immediately confessed. Hearing these words, Zhang Xian came to a realization why Lu Sun picked a fight with him out of nowhere. So this was the reason. Despite being the most reputable star teacher in the academy, 2 students of his withdrew from his lessons to listen to the lessons of the worst teacher. No matter who it was, they would definitely find this situation unacceptable. How could he continue teaching other students in the future if word were to spread out? How could he win his students' trust like this? Alright, you can listen to my lessons. Since the matter had already happened, if he sent Xiao Yanfeng back, others might think that he was afraid of Lu Sun. As such, he could only pretend to be unaware of the matter. In any case, he wasn't obliged to offer pointers to students listening in his lesson. They were free to leave if they want to, and it wouldn't really waste any time of his. Stop for a moment. You all should have already tried to cultivate the cultivation techniques I passed you all yesterday. Ignoring the trio, Zhang Xian turned his attention to Xiaoye, Wang Ying, and the others. We have. The eyes of his students glowed in excitement. The cultivation technique Zhang Laoshe had created for them was incredible. With just a single night of training, they felt the energy within their body growing stronger. Just the effort of a single day was comparable to what they achieved in 10 previously. As such, they felt even more impressed with the teacher before them. Let me see your punching routines. Wang Ying, we'll start from you. Zhang Xian turned his gaze over to her. Yes. Wang Ying stepped forward and swiftly executed a punching routine. Not bad. After which, Zhang Xian casually offered some pointers and pointed out a few flaws in her cultivation. The same occurred for Xiaoye, Lu Yang, and the others. All in all, the speed at which his 5 students were cultivating it were rather fast. In fact, it was an astonishing speed compared to other students. Even so, if they were to continue at this pace, there would still be a significant gap between his students and Lu Sun's. Lu Sun was a star teacher of the academy. Those who studied under him were basically the top students of the entire academy. The entrance examination assessed a student's overall performance and their potential. Xiaoye, Wang Ying, and the others were only able to squeeze into the top 100 via their potential. If one were to only consider their fighting prowess, only Xiaoye was better off among the 5 of them. The other 4 would probably be ranked below 500. This was especially true for Yuan Tao. His placing in the entrance examination was reflective of his strength. It was impossible to have the several hundred of students under Lu Sun fight with the 5 students of his. That would be unfair. As such, he would pick 5 of them out to fight with them. To choose the top 5 out of several hundred powerful students, it was clear to see how difficult it would be for Xiaoye and the others to triumph over them. Putting aside the others, the top 3 students of the entrance examination had come under his tutelage, and all 3 of them had already broken into Fighter 2 Dan. Given how the 5 of them were unable to defeat Zhu Hong, who was ranked 4th, despite ganging up against him, how could they possibly deal with the other 3 individually? Even though potential, talent, and personality could help to boost a student's ranking in the freshman tournament, what was valued the highest was still strength. Without strength, everything else was empty talk. Once they lose on the sparring field, all of the former would be negated by the others. Wang Ying's legs has just recovered and her body hasn't adapted to the changes in her body yet. As such, she is unable to utilize her strength properly. With 2 months of rest, her condition should improve, but half a month that is too difficult. Jiang has just escaped from his trauma, allowing his mastery of the spear to improve rapidly. However, it's possible for weapons to be banned in the freshman tournament, given the nature of it as a sparring contest. His advantage might very possibly become his downfall. I have to find a way to boost his barehanded fighting skills within this period. Also, it will take at least half a month for the condition of Lu Yang's right arm to improve, and by then time is truly lacking. Looking through the conditions of the few via the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian rubbed his glabella and his worry reflected on his face. If he were to train them conventionally, he was confident that he could induce a massive improvement in his 5 students, grasping the entire school by surprise. However, it was too daunting a task to achieve it within half a month to make it in time for the freshman tournament. Regardless of whether it was Wang Ying, Zhao Ye, Zhen Yang, Lu Yang, or Wang Tao, each of them had problems with their bodies. Even though he knew the remedy to treating each of them, it was hard for him to resolve their problems entirely within this short period of time. The Library of Heaven's Path could see through flaws, but it didn't show him the correct way to resolving them. The methods he came up with to solve the problems that his students encountered were the conclusions he came up with after researching innumerable books, so the effectiveness of them all could only be considered average. That short amount of time he had wasn't sufficient to solve their problems entirely, needless to say, induce a rapid growth in their cultivation. Of course, if he were to impart the Heaven's Path divine art to them, their cultivation would surely soar immediately. However, Zhang Xian knew that he mustn't impart the cultivation technique to anyone else. Possessing a treasure beyond his ability to guard was a crime. It was possible that it might bring him calamity if news of his cultivation technique were to spread out. Even if the Library of Heaven's Path was able to identify the locations of the Ming men of his opponents, it wasn't of much use if he was battling against enemies far above his cultivation realm. Putting aside the fact that true experts did not have such weakness, and even if they had, if he was unable to match up to them in terms of speed and strength, he might not be able to damage the latter even if he were to hit them squarely at their vitals. Zheng Yang's situation is slightly easier to resolve. I can try to find a battle technique for him. Within half a month, he should be able to achieve some level of accomplishment in it. This should be sufficient for him to deal with most opponents. I have helped Wang Ying to open up the blocked acupoints on her legs. However, 2 years of injury has caused severe damage to her fundamentals. Her meridians and muscles require a long period of recovery. Conventional methods can't possibly allow her legs to recover completely in half a month, needless to say, attain a higher level. Unless her legs are nourished with a specialized medicinal solution. On the other hand, Lu Yang needs some pills to clear his obstructed meridians. As for Zhao Ye and Yuan Tao, just as what I have analyzed before, it should be sufficient as long as I find a way to awaken their unique constitution. All these sounded easy, but carrying them out would prove to be difficult. Putting aside the others, even Zhen Yang's problem, which seemed easy to solve, was tricky. He had learned the way of the spear for many years and he might find it difficult to grasp barehanded techniques. If he was unable to assimilate the battle technique to his own, it might potentially become his downfall instead, causing his fighting prowess to regress instead. Learning powerful battle techniques took time and learning weak ones were pointless. To assimilate a technique to his own in half a month, the difficulty to do so was clear for all to see. Putting aside the matter of Zheng Yang's battle technique, Wang Ying's medicinal solution should be able to be found in the Apothecary Guild. That is to say, the problems of the 4 of them can be settled at the Apothecary Guild. Determination reflected in Zhang Xian's eyes. Looks like I have to pass today's pill debate by hook or by crook. Actually, after the threat of his expulsion had passed, he could have taken it easy and taught his students leisurely. However, since Lu Sun came running over to undermine his dignity, as a transcender with a cheat code, how could he possibly allow him to climb over his head? Sayings such as, "the river reverses its flow after 30 years, were all nonsense. One didn't simply wait for revenge to come by itself. Since the other party is willing to send his face over, naturally, Zhang Xian wouldn't go easy on him. Furthermore, even though it seemed as though he had settled the Education Bureau and wouldn't be fired in the short term, but there were still a lot of people waiting for him to make a fool out of himself. After all, he stepped over the dignity of a school leader as a teacher and caused a scandal in the school. People were already gossiping about how the school didn't know how to choose its personnel. There wasn't a single organization that would allow the existence of a ticking time bomb in their ranks. If he was unable to make his stand in the freshman tournament, all kind of pressure would come stacking upon him, making his life difficult. Thus, he had to win, regardless of the price he had to pay. As for why he didn't choose to simply leave the academy when there's a massive world out there as a teacher, if he were to lose upon being challenged, it was no different from a guilty criminal escaping pursuit. It would leave a stain in his records in the teacher guild, and by then, he would probably be unable to even be promoted to a high-level teacher, much less say, master teacher. However, this wasn't the main reason. The main reason was that these 5 students of him already held absolute trust in him. He had already become an important person in their lives, and as a teacher, he could not let them down. Alright, I'll start the lessons now. Upon arriving at a conclusion, Zhang Xian didn't panic and started teaching his students calmly. His lectures were based on the numerous correct theories he had gathered from all the books in the teacher's compendium pavilion. They were profound albeit boring, giving the listeners an epiphany. Not only did his 5 students benefit greatly from his lecture, even Wang Tao, Wang Yan, and Zhao Yanfeng, who were listening in by the side, flushed red in agitation. They felt as though they had just eaten a ginseng fruit. At this moment, they realized that just by listening in, even without Zhang Laosher's personal guidance, they had struck the jackpot. As long as they continued listening to his lessons seriously, their cultivation would surely rise by leaps and bounds. What Zhang Laosher was explaining was a new type of training system, an entirely new perspective, something that would revolutionize the entire world of cultivation. I'll end the lesson here. Cultivate properly when you all return. I will check your cultivation tomorrow. Looking at the time, it was already nearing noon. Zhang Xian gestured for them to leave. Yes. Zhao Ye and the others rose and bade Zhang Xian farewell. The pill debate is about to start, I should head over now. Time didn't wait for anyone. Since he applied for the pill debate, he naturally would not give up on it. Zhang Xian walked out of the classroom toward the Apothecary Guild. Soon, upon reaching the guild, Wen Shui came welcoming him. The contemptuous gaze yesterday had been replaced with that of respect. Even though the person in front was younger than her, he was already a certified apprentice apothecary. She dared not to offend him. Apothecary Ouyang Cheng asked me to wait here for you. He says that the 10 apothecaries are here and the pill debate can start at any time now. Of course, if you wish to go back on your words, you can also choose to cancel this pill debate. Wen Shui said. There's no need to cancel it. Zhang Xian shook his head. It would take too much time for him to become a 1-star apothecary through pill forging. Since he was able to do it today, there was no reason for him to back off. This way. As though seeing through his intentions, Wen Shui shook her head and brought him in. It was the building where the apprentice apothecary examination was held. However, they proceeded deeper within and soon, they arrived at a vast hall. Several hundred square meters large, 10 chairs were placed in a circle at the center. There was a giant cauldron placed behind the circle of chairs and a flame burned majestically beneath it, bringing one a stifling sensation. Pill debate, in order to ascertain whether a theory was true or not, had to be verified on the field. The cauldron was here for such use. Zhang Xian, you're here. It isn't too late to regret now. Rest assured, with your talents, if you were to become my apprentice, I will make sure that you will be able to forge pills within half a year to pass the apothecary examinations. Jia. The door opened and Ouyang Cheng walked out. His words carried a tone of persuasion to it. He still didn't think that it was likely for this young man to pass the pill debate. Half a year is too long. Zhang Xian shook his head. What a joke. If I had half a year of time, I wouldn't have to go through the trouble to come knocking at the Apothecary Guild in search of books. All right. Knowing that there was no way to persuade him otherwise, Ouyang Cheng shook his head in disappointment. In his perspective, Zhang Xian was still young and thus, it couldn't be helped that he would be complacent. Once he blew it up, he would know the difficulty of pill debate. Esteemed guests, please enter. Upon his shout, numerous human figures entered the room. There were exactly 10 of them, and some of them were middle-aged while others are elderly. Even the youngest of them was probably at minimum 40 years old. The apothecary from yesterday, Du Man, was also within the group. These people were wearing a robe specially made for apothecaries. There was a unique emblem hanging on their chest, and the single star on it was exceptionally conspicuous. 1-star apothecaries. Chapter 107, Pill Debate begins normally. If one wanted to take the examination for a 1-star apothecary, a 2-star apothecary had to be present to witness the proceedings. However, Zhang Xian was taking the pill debate examination instead of the traditional pill forging examination. As such, his examination only required 10 1-star apothecaries to conduct the examination. Even so, the entire proceedings had to be recorded using a record crystal, so that the headquarters could check and verify it. In fact, even some apprentice apothecaries were qualified to look through it, and if it was proven that some of the examiners went easy on the examinee or so, all apothecaries involved in the proceedings would be stripped of their position and expelled. This was precisely the reason why no one dared to go easy on others during a pill debate. Regardless of how formidable the power backing the examinee was, they were unable and unwilling to do so. Guild leader Yang, you said that someone wants to undergo pill debate? It can't be this young brat here, can it? Upon sitting down, they glanced at Zhang Xian and a bizarre expression appeared on their faces. An apothecary took the initiative to pose the doubts of them all to Cheng. Those who undergo pill debate were either master teachers or scholars who were well versed in pills and medicines. Upon receiving the notice, everyone thought that it would be an elderly. Never in their dreams did they expect to see a young man who was barely even 20. Guild leader Yang, are you sure you aren't joking with us? You really aren't pulling our legs? Forged pills are just like white wine, the older the alcohol is, the more fragrant it is. Age may not mean much, but a veteran with numerous years of research behind him is definitely in a better position than someone who had just started studying the subject. A fellow who isn't even 20 yet wants to undergo pill debate, even if he started to learn from his mother's womb, how much can he learn? Zhang Xian may be young, but he has a deep comprehension of medicinal herbs. He even achieved a perfect score in the apprentice apothecary written paper examination. Upon seeing the doubtful looks on everyone's face, Cheng explained. Perfect score. That means nothing at all. The apprentice apothecary written paper only assesses the student's understanding of the medicinal properties of herbs, their classification, and traits. Scoring full marks can only mean that he has a solid foundation. However, to conduct a pill debate based on that, calling all of us over for that, aren't you being a little too reckless? Pill forging isn't just about understanding the properties of medicinal herb and their classification. It is much more profound than that. One has to feel and comprehend the art of pill forging. If he hopes to become an apothecary just because he knows some basic stuff, isn't he being a little way too optimistic? The crowd chirped in, their tones filled with contempt and disdain. Written paper was just an examination conducted for apprentice apothecary. Official apothecaries often came into contact with medicinal herbs and scoring full marks for them meant nothing at all. Upon seeing so many people treat him contemptuously before he even got an opportunity to speak, Zhang Xian felt a little helpless. If an apothecary's skill was proportionate to his age, you might as well dig a few of them up from the graves. Pill forging. They would be formidable if they didn't turn themselves to ashes in the midst of doing so. Cough. Zhang Xian coughed to interrupt the commotion occurring among the apothecaries and spoke, Guild leader Yang didn't invite you all here to talk about age. I may be young, but that doesn't mean I'm unable to match up to the rest of you in terms of forging pills. Match up to the rest of us? You aren't even an apothecary, and yet you are so arrogant that you'd look down on us? Youngsters should be humbler. Despite not knowing much about pills, you dare to undergo pill debate. You sure are gutsy. Arrogant fellow, when the pill debate begins in a moment's time, I hope that you still can talk as casually as you are doing now. The moment he spoke up, all their arrows came aiming toward him. A deep frown was on every single one of their faces as they attempted to tear him apart with their words. Pill debate was actually equivalent to challenging the wisdom of 10 apothecaries with the knowledge of a single individual. All the apothecaries who gathered here upon Ouyang Cheng's call were all famous figures in Tianxian Kingdom, and every single one of them were of high standing. If they were to lose to a master teacher or an elder, it was still a result acceptable to them. But for an immature brat who wasn't even 20 yet, if they were to really lose to him, how could they still uphold their dignity? Thus, they didn't have any intention to treat Zhang Xian kindly from the moment they saw him. On the contrary, they tried to oppress him from the very start. It was an attempt to crush his confidence. As a bachelor in his previous life, he was tortured daily by the loving display of couples every day. Even so, didn't he manage to overcome them and live on? This kind of attacks no longer worked on Zhang Xian anymore. Alright. The scent of gunpowder was already apparent even though the pill debate had yet to begin. Upon seeing the argument escalating, dark lines streaked across Ouyang Cheng's face. He hurriedly interjected, "There is no use talking about it all, everything should be proven with capabilities instead. After all, capability doesn't differentiate between ages. Since I have gathered everyone here to conduct a pill debate, then let's just go straight to the point and begin. I'll first talk about the rules of the pill debate." Afraid that the crowd might come up with even more toxic words, Ouyang Cheng immediately began explaining, "Pill debate isn't a true debate. Rather, the 10 apothecaries will raise questions for the examinee to answer. As long as there's a question he is unable to answer or answers erroneously, the examinee fails. If both parties are unsure of the answers to the questions raised, a test can be conducted on the spot to verify the answer. Whoever's theory is able to produce higher quality pills will win. Of course, the questions raised by the apothecaries must be within the sphere of the knowledge of a one-star apothecary. Also, the examiners are not allowed to pose a question about secrets unknown to others. At this point, Ouyang Cheng scanned the surroundings and asked, "Are there any other questions?" The rules were simple and the explanation was clear. No. The crowd shook their heads simultaneously. As an apothecary, even if they had never heard of pill debate, they should have done their homework on it beforehand. There was a limit to the questions they could raise to the examinee. After all, how could an apprentice apothecary possibly answer a question about forging a grade 3 pill or some profound pill forging method? Since there are no questions, then Ouyang Cheng raised his hand grandly, and just as he was about to announce the start of the pill debate, Zhang Xian stood up with a frown. "Hold for a moment. Why? Are you scared now? It's too late now. It's too late for you to regret your decision. We can either begin the pill debate now or you can admit your defeat straight up." Upon seeing Zhang Xian halt the proceedings, they thought that he wanted to resign and sneered coldly at him. "Regret my decision? You want to make me regret my decision with those standards of yours?" Zhang Xian activated his aggression-pulling aura. "What did you say?" An elder bellowed loudly. As expected, the apothecaries here immediately erupted upon hearing his words. If looks could kill, he would have been sliced into numerous pieces by now. "I'm sorry, I'm not saying that your standards are not up to par. I'm saying that all of you here are unable to make the cut." With his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian emanated a haughty disposition. "Why? You want to bicker with me? Do you believe that I can choke you all to death with a few words? You arrogant, ignorant brat." Instantaneously, everyone exploded. Everyone flew into a rampage and their beards flew along with their vigorous breathing. Seeing the atmosphere heating up and that he had become a public enemy for all of them here, Zhang Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. With a smile, he looked toward the center of the room and asked, "Guild leader Ouyang, it seems that they look down on me just because I'm my age. To tell you the truth, I also look down on them. Actually, I don't think that there is much point to a mere debate, so why don't we increase the difficulty of the examination?" "Increase the difficulty?" Ouyang Cheng frowned. "Pill debate is already difficult by itself, and you want to increase the difficulty? Also, how do you intend to go about increasing the difficulty?" The others were also bewildered. Lad, do you find your death lacking splendor, so you want to find a more exciting way to do so? Simply, pill debate is just theoretical and words are empty. Ignoring the bizarre expression everyone was shooting him with, Zhang Xian raised his hands boldly, carrying a majestic disposition with him. How about this? As long as any apothecary here dares to forge pills before me, regardless of what methods he uses, I am able to point out the name of his forging method and the errors he commits in the process. If any of those here finds what I say incorrect, I can admit defeat immediately. Chapter 108, Meng Yan, what? We are official apothecaries, and you, a mere apprentice, dares to claim that you are able to point out our mistakes? What are you putting on an act for? We apothecaries have numerous means up our sleeves. Putting aside whether you can point out our mistakes, if you can even recognize the method we are using to forge pills, we can consider it your win. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, everyone exploded once more. An immature brat dared to claim that he had the ability to see through their forging methods and flaws just by seeing them forge a pill before him? Is he mad? At one side, Ouyang Cheng and Wen Shui felt frenzied. At the very most, one could only ask some remote questions in pill debate. As long as one was well versed in the knowledge of pill forging, much of it could be rationalized and inferred. However, to point out one's forging method and the errors in it? Pill forging was just like a person's handwriting. There are 10,000 different types of handwriting for 10,000 different people. Even for the same pill, there were at least 1,000 different methods of forging it. The movements in each method were profound and intricate, and a slight difference in their motions could mean an entirely different forging method. Furthermore, each and every pill forging methods that were able to be passed down through the generations were the blood, sweat, and tears of innumerable people and had been refined countless times toward perfection. It might not be entirely perfect, but at the very least, these apothecaries had been using it daily and never found anything off about it. Even if a 3-star apothecary were to be here, it would be hard for him to point out the errors in it. This wasn't just a mere rise in the difficulty anymore, it was an overturn of the rules, raising the difficulty to the heavens. If an apprentice apothecary undergoing a pill debate was equivalent to the difficulty to 3-digit addition and subtraction, what Zhang Xian proposed was equivalent to Goldbach conjecture. The difficulty wouldn't just increase, it would be increased to an unimaginable level. Brother, are you sure you aren't jesting? Wen Shui looked at him as though she was looking at a monster. Yesterday, he wasn't even sure about the existence of a book collection vault in the Apothecary Guild, and he didn't know what books he had to read for the apprentice apothecary examination. Yet, today, he suddenly became an expert, putting on airs here. If she didn't witness it personally, she might have thought that he was afflicted with dissociative identity disorder. Even though a human's personality changed over time, it should be impossible for such a massive change to occur in a person in a single day. Even if he wanted to act cool, there should be no need for him to play it so big. Why? You dare not agree? Are you afraid that you will be embarrassed after I point out your errors? Or are you afraid of being humiliated when I point out your forging method? Ignoring their stares, Zhang Xian chuckled lightly. He had already contemplated over the matter and came up with a solution for passing the pill debate. Even though he was done looking through the basic tier book collection vault in the Apothecary Guild, there was still a certain level of difficulty for him to successfully pass the pill debate. After all, there were so many apothecaries assessing him, and it was hard to tell whether they might have capabilities beyond that of the books. They might come up with questions beyond what was written in the books. If he failed to answer their question, it would be an immediate loss. Since that was the case, he should find a way to prevent them from bringing up such problems. In other people's perspective, to determine a forging method and pointing out the flaws in it through watching how a person forged pills was much more difficult than undergoing a pill debate. However, Zhang Xian possessed the Library of Heaven's Path, which allowed him to easily see through the flaws of others. What was nigh impossible to others became an absolutely simple task before him, only requiring reading word by word off a book. An apothecary forging pills was equivalent to a fighter executing his battle technique. A book would be compiled by looking at it. Thus, Zhang Xian intentionally drew aggression from the others to incur their rage. After which, by behaving contemptuously, the others would definitely think of him as arrogant and agree to it. As long as they agree to this method of examination, once you all agree to it, everything else will be a piece of cake. Witness as I play you all to your deaths. Since you are looking for excitement, we will fulfill your request. Indeed, since you are adamant on acting cool, we'll see how you cry afterward. As he expected, the crowd immediately exploded yet again after his taunting. Every single of them was tempted to pay greetings Zhang Xian's 18 generations of ancestors and all of his kin. Embarrassed your head. The heck that we would be humiliated. We just fear whether you have sufficient capabilities to do so. The 10 apothecaries' fighting spirit roused. If not in consideration of their identity, they would have charged forward to bash him. Since all of you have the guts to agree to it, then let's begin. Upon seeing how he was able to settle the issue so easily, Zhang Xian chuckled. Then, looking at Ouyang Cheng, who was standing at the center of the room, he said, Guild leader Ouyang, can we begin? Of course. He didn't expect a simple pill debate would escalate to this point. Ouyang Cheng felt helpless and frustrated. At this moment, he had no choice but to go along with it. May I ask which apothecary would like to go first? I am willing to offer you all free pointer. Zhang Xian flung his sleeves arrogantly. The faces of the crowd flushed red in anger. I can't stand watching him act like this any longer. Allow me to teach this brat a lesson first. Finally, an apothecary couldn't hold in his rage any longer and stood up. It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. His face was slightly gray and his eyes glowed as though they were lanterns. With a single look, it was clear that he wasn't someone with a good temper. It's Apothecary Meng Yan. Meng Yan's temper may be awful, but he's a true one-star primary stage apothecary. Given how he's able to forge over a dozen kinds of pills, he isn't someone to be underestimated. Indeed, a few of his apprentices even made it big. Furthermore, he has many kinds of forging methods. It is most suitable for him to make the first move. Seeing the middle-aged man stepping out, the rest of the apothecaries secretly nodded their heads in agreement. How could there be any mediocre figures among the one-star apothecaries? This apothecary Meng Yan might not be the most capable apothecary among the group, but his skills were not the worst of the bunch. They would be able to see the capabilities of that arrogant fellow through him. Lad, I will start forging now. If you are unable to tell the forging method later on and point out the flaws in it, prepare to be punished. With a cold sneer, Meng Yan walked over to the cauldron. He casually grabbed a few medicinal herbs from the shelves by the side, and by controlling his jinqi, he induced the flame beneath the cauldron to become even more vigorous. Xiong xiong. The flames burned furiously off its fuel and a slight chiming sound resounded from the cauldron, as though it was a giant bell. Hu hu hu. Stalks after stalks of medicinal herbs were thrown into the cauldron and under the high temperature, a unique scent of medicine floated into the air. This is pill forging. Zhang Xian might have read quite a few books in the basic tier book collection vault, but this was the first time he was seeing someone forge a pill. Incredible. He couldn't help but be impressed by it. In terms of cultivation realm, he was in no way inferior to the other party. However, the way how the other party threw the medicinal herbs into the cauldron so casually without the slightest hesitation or pause, and how every single stalk of medicinal herb was placed under optimal conditions for it to best unleash its medicinal properties, it was something he could not hope to match. This required continuous practice over time. He might excel in theories, but this didn't mean that he was capable of materializing it into physical actions. After a moment of looking at it, after integrating the knowledge from the basic tier book collection vault and the analysis on them by the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian soon realized that he was unable to discern anything at all. He wasn't even able to see what forging method the other party is utilizing, much less see through the flaws in his actions. No wonder everyone stared at him as though he had gone mad upon hearing his request. If even guild leader Ouyang, who wielded the greatest ability among the group here, was unable to see through his forging method and had a perplexed expression at this very moment, how could an apprentice apothecary possibly see through it? Flaws. After confirming that he was unable to see through it through the sea of knowledge he had accumulated, Zhang Xian didn't hesitate any longer and he willed for a book to be compiled. Vying. With a loud explosion, the library of Heaven's Path jolted and a book suddenly appeared in his mind. Written inside were this apothecary Meng Yan's pill forging method and the flaws in them. This, after taking a look, a bizarre expression appeared on Zhang Xian's face. Chapter 109, Tranquil Heart Pill, Not Bad. Meng Yan is getting more and more adept in his pill forging technique. Indeed. If he is able to identify a flaw in his pill forging method, I will twist my head off. Zhang Xian noticed that the gazes of the other apothecaries were fixated on Meng Yan and they nodded their head in approval in response to the display of his skills. They were able to tell what the other party's pill forging method before and they had once used it as well, so they weren't too unfamiliar with it. This was also precisely the reason why it was harder to find flaws in it. Even they were unable to see the slightest mistake in the other party's forging. Every movement of his strictly adhered to the forging method without a single error in it. Guild leader Ouyang, do you think that he will be able to see through the forging method and the flaws in it? After bringing Zhang Xian over, Wen Shui didn't leave immediately. At this instance, she was standing behind Ouyang Cheng and she couldn't help but ask him the question. She wasn't even an apprentice and thus, she was unable to see through the various intricacies of pill forging. So, she could only place her expectation on this guild leader before her to explain the situation to her. Flaws? Ouyang Cheng shook his head. To tell you the truth, Meng Yan's pill forging method had been passed down for more than 300 years. It went through the hands of countless individuals and even if there is an error in it, it would have long been corrected. Anyway, given my level of standard, I am unable to see any errors in it. Not even you are able to discern any flaws. Wen Shui covered her mouth in shock. Ouyang Cheng was the most capable apothecary in Tianxian Kingdom, reaching the astounding level of the one-star intermediate stage. If he was unable to discern anything, how could Zhang Xian, who had just become an apothecary apprentice, possibly tell anything from it? Who? After a moment, the flames weakened. Meng Yan opened the lid and the fragrance of medicine gushed out from the cauldron. The pill had been formed. Meng Yan pinched lightly and grabbed 3 pills from the cauldron. Each of them was round with a smooth surface. They were roughly the size of a longan and radiated a unique glow. Alright, as expected of apothecary Meng Yan. Not only was the pill formed, it even reached the level of satiation. Incredible. Looking at the pill in his palm, everyone couldn't help but be impressed. Upon being forged successfully, the pills would assume different appearances depending on the efficacy of its medicinal property. It could be classified into 4 tiers, namely formation, satiation, perfection, and inscribed pill. It was already incredible for typical 1-star primary stage apothecaries to reach the level of formation when forging grade 1 pills. To reach the level of satiation was already something beyond what those of his level was capable of. Lad, I am already done forging my pills. So, what method did I just use and what flaws are there in it? Meng Yan returned to his seat and looked at Zhang Xian coldly. Upon hearing his words, the gaze of the others focused on Zhang Xian. They wanted to see what kind of shocking words this arrogant lad would speak of. Initially, they thought this lad would speak immediately. However, his eyes simply stared 45 degrees upward with a sorrowful expression on his face. He shook his head slowly and sighed. Hurry up if you have something to say. Seeing this fellow still persisting on keeping up the act, Meng Yan clenched his fist and smashed it on the table. Pang! Given his formidable strength and the current fury he had accumulated, a crack appeared on the table, putting it in a state of near collapse. Since you aren't embarrassed by it, then I will begin speaking. Seeing that the atmosphere was sufficiently heated up, Zhang Xian looked over calmly with a lowered head and said, "If I'm not wrong, the pill you forged should be the Tranquil Heart pill which fighters often consume." "That's right." Meng Yan nodded his head. It was easy for an apothecary to see what a kind of pill it was, so it couldn't be considered a formidable feat. "The method you used is 10 formulas of tranquil water." Zhang Xian continued. "That's right. This is 10 formulas of tranquil water. This is the most suitable method to forging Tranquil Heart pill. It doesn't mean much for you to see through this." Not expecting for the other party to be able to discern it, Meng Yan was slightly shocked. However, he didn't pay the matter much heed. 10 formulas of tranquil water was a unique method to forge Tranquil Heart pills. It was said that an apothecary created this method while looking at the surface of the water of a mountainous stream. The entire technique emphasized greatly on delicacy and quietness. There weren't too many intense movements in it, as though it was a quiet stream, flowing slowly and steadily down the mountains. As it fulfilled the concept of Tranquil Heart pill, it was easy for a pill to form using this method to forge it. Given that he was able to tell that the pill forged was Tranquil Heart pill, it wasn't that difficult to infer that the method used was 10 formulas of tranquil water. True, it doesn't mean much. However, it is a pity that you have warped the 10 formulas of tranquil water beyond recognition, causing it to lose the fundamental meaning behind it. Zhang Xian flung his hand and said with a stern voice. "Warped beyond recognition? Nonsense. If it is truly warped beyond recognition, how can I possibly successfully forge the Tranquil Heart pill, even reaching the level of satiation at that?" Meng Yan retorted furiously. "Since you don't believe my words, then I shall point it out clearly to you." Zhang Xian stepped forward and pinched the pill lightly to place it on his palm. His gaze swept through the room as he asked, "Who can tell me what effects should this pill possess?" Tranquil Heart pill is a grade 1 pill. It helps cultivators to calm their minds so that their thoughts will not wander. This kind of pill is effective even on Fighter 8 Dan Zhongshe realm experts, and as such, it is one of the best sellers of the Apothecary Guild. Wen Shui said. As a receptionist, she had sold all kinds of pills. It was natural that she would have a deep understanding of the effects of this Tranquil Heart pill. Indeed, this pill can help cultivators to calm their minds. Zhang Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. However, it's a pity that this pill which Apothecary Meng Yan doesn't have such effects. On the contrary, it might even cause a person's cultivation to go berserk if consumed. Nonsense. Meng Yan's expression darkened. The other party's action of doubting the efficacy of his pill in public was equivalent to humiliating him. You need not be so quick to refute my words. Let me finish my words first. Ignoring the other party's burst of outrage, Zhang Xian chuckled and continued, "If this pill was created by Apothecary Meng Yan yesterday, I wouldn't say such words. However, it is a pity that it isn't yesterday now, and this pill is destined to be a failure." Yesterday? Is there any difference to it? Lad, clarify your words. Don't try to mystify us. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, the crowd had no idea what Zhang Xian was driving at. As such, they couldn't help but raise their doubts. I will explain to you all right now. Forging pills aren't just about technique and skills, one's mental state plays a huge part in it as well. Only by infusing one's mental state into the pill will the efficacy of the medicine be heightened. Tranquil Heart pill requires the mental state of the apothecary forging it to be serene, and only through such can the pill be forged perfectly. I believe all of you should have seen the bad temper of Apothecary Meng Yan. He can be set off easily with a single word. With rage in his heart, how can he possibly forge the Tranquil Heart pill which calms others? At which, Zhang Xian slightly knocked on the table before Meng Yan. A crack had appeared in the table after the latter's previous punch. At this moment, unable to take the pressure any longer, it fell apart. Upon the sight, everyone came to a realization. His words were true. Pill forging was intricately linked to one's state of mind. It was inappropriate and unsuitable for one to forge a tranquil heart pill when under such rampaging emotions. Of course, his fiery temper isn't sufficient to ruin the pill. The crux of the problem is that there is killing intent within Apothecary Meng Yan right now. If I'm not wrong, you probably killed someone this morning and you still bear resentment toward the person. Most probably, you were betrayed by someone you trust. This resentment and killing intent have been infused into the Tranquil Heart pill when you were forging it. Even though only a sliver of it had slipped in, to the cultivators who consume it, it could have disastrous after-effects. It increases the possibility of their cultivation going berserk exponentially. If so, it will result in fatal damage onto their fundamentals. Zhang Xian said. Meng Yan's body swayed. He looked at Zhang Xian as though he was looking at a ghost and his face immediately turned ghastly white. Chapter 110, You are about to die just like what Zhang Xian said. Meng Yan was hiding resentment and killing intent within his heart. He was also betrayed by someone he deeply trusted in. Just that, it was something that happened this morning. He thought that his rage had already ceased and never would he have thought that he would infuse these emotions into his pill. But how was he able to tell? Through the pill he forged. How was that possible? It's true. Upon seeing Meng Yan's expression, even the most dull-witted of the lot could tell that what Zhang Xian said was the truth. They stared at one another in disbelief. Not only was he able to discern the killing intent in him through his pill forging, he is even able to deduce that he was betrayed by a trusted person. Are you an apprentice apothecary or a fortune teller? If you all think that there's something wrong with my words, there is an easy way to ascertain it. The guild should have pill sample beasts, right? We can feed this tranquil heart pill to it and see whether it will calm down or rampage. Upon seeing Meng Yan at a loss for words, Zhang Xian chuckled lightly. Usually, in order to ascertain the authenticity and effects of a pill, the Apothecary Guild would prepare some pill sample beasts to test them. This savage beast was extremely sensitive towards pills. Upon consumption of the pills, one could determine the effects of the pills through its response. It corresponded to the lab rats used in clinical trials in the world of Zhang Xian's previous life. Only after passing the tests could the medicine be fed to humans. This was to ensure the safety of those consuming it. Cheng nodded his head and an apprentice apothecary walked out of the room. In a moment, a cage of savage beasts that resembled white mice was brought over. Opening the mouth of one, the tranquil heart pill was fed to it. A short moment later, the pill's sample beast started to get agitated, running around the cage and clawing everything in sight. It didn't seem to be calming down in the least. Normally, after consuming a tranquil heart pill, the pill's sample beast would lie quietly by the side. Yet, after consuming this pill, the pill's sample beast becomes visibly agitated. In the midst through Zhang Xian's words, the pill's sample beast who consumed the tranquil heart pill ran toward another of its kind, climbed on top of it and started to conduct insertion exercises forcibly onto the other party. Cough cough, the strong sexual drive experienced by the one who consumes the pill shows that not only does the pill not calms one, it even induces anger in them. If I'm not wrong, the person whom Apothecary Meng Yan killed today is a woman, one whom he had a sexual relationship with. Her eventual betrayal resulted in his outrage, causing the pill to contain strong emotions of possessiveness and frenzy. Upon seeing the drugged pill sample beast in the cage crushing on another pill sample beast and forcing itself on the other, not giving the other party a chance to retaliate at all, the other apothecaries stared at one another in astonishment. Is this really tranquil heart pill? Are you sure that it isn't an aphrodisiac? It is fortunate that it isn't fed to a human. Otherwise, not only will their heart no calm down, they will even turn into a cough cough, it will cause disastrous effects. Everyone shuddered upon thinking about the possibility. This morning, I saw the concubine that I dote on the most conducting adultery on me with the butler. In that instant, rage filled me and I killed both of them on the spot. Upon seeing everyone's gaze focusing on him, Meng Yan shook his head as he explained. Since the other party had already said so much, there was nothing for him to hide. This incident had made him furious. For the entire day, he had been in bad mood. The reason why he stepped out was to embarrass Zhang Xian so as to vent his frustration. Is that for real? Seeing through so much through looking at another forged pill. Seeing Meng Yan admit to it, the others stared at Zhang Xian as though he was a monster. If their gazes were contemptuous before, they had a grave expression on at this very moment. One's pill reflected one's state of mind, but to see that an apothecary had killed someone earlier this morning, even inferring that the person was his concubine, through watching him forge pills, the heck, you must be a constable, right? Otherwise how could he possibly tell that much? Alright, I have already pointed out the flaws in it. Apothecary Meng Yan, do you need me to go on? Ignoring the shocked expression on the others, Zhang Xian said with a smile. The Library of Heaven's Path could see through all flaws. It was a simple task for him to tell that he had been betrayed by his concubine and that his pill carried killing intent and resentment. There's no need. I admit defeat. Meng Yan surrendered. The numerous apothecaries on the field, including himself, weren't able to see through the problem in the pill he forged. Yet, the other party was able to see through it directly, even telling so much about it was a clear loss, even if he didn't wish to accept it. Just like that he surrendered. Wen Shui's eyes widened. An apothecary admitted defeat to an apprentice? If she didn't see this for herself, she wouldn't dare to believe it. However, it made sense when she thought about it. To be able to see that far, that fellow's eye for discernment was too incredible. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Alright, next. Now that the first person had admitted defeat, Zhang Xian had achieved first blood. He turned to look at the remaining 9 people with a smile. I shall face him. An elderly stood up. If they thought that Zhang Xian was here to cause trouble previously, after Meng Yan's incident, they finally understood that this fellow was an expert among experts. No wonder he was so confident as to dare to challenge the pill debate, even raising the difficulty at that. It is Apothecary Chen Xiao. Apothecary Chen may not be the best among us in terms of pill forging, but he is the oldest. He is an extremely rational and calm person, unlike Meng Yan and his fiery temper. I believe that he will be able to defeat that lad. Seeing the elder stand up, everyone secretly nodded their heads in approval. This apothecary Chen Xiao was the oldest among the 10 of them, as well as the most level-headed one. Surely there wouldn't be any problems if he was the one to make a move. Hu hu hu. The flame beneath the cauldron crackled. In a moment's time, he extracted a few pills from it. It was the same pill as the one Meng Yan forged previously, Tranquil Heart Pill. It was also perfectly round and smooth with radiance glowing off its surface. However, it was clearly of higher quality, reaching perfection. Alright, I am done forging the pills. You don't need to identify the forging method, it's the same as the one apothecary Meng Yan used previously, 10 formulas of tranquil water. If you're able to point out the flaws in it, I will concede and admit defeat. Apothecary Chen Xiao said calmly as he grasped the pills he just forged in his hands. Incredible. This is truly a wise move. To use the same forging method to forge the exact same pills. Previously, he was able to point out the killing intent in Apothecary Meng Yan's heart as the flaw in his pill forging, but Apothecary Chen Xiao's state of mind is serene and he is a level-headed person. He should be unable to find another one of this kind of flaw on him. Let's see how he will fare this time. Upon seeing Apothecary Chen Xiao's actions, everyone couldn't help but exclaim internally that it was indeed the older ones who were more cunning. Even Zhang Xian couldn't help but nod his head. The other party was indeed extremely wise. Even though the other party had clearly told him that he used the same forging method so that he doesn't have to guess it, his actions were, in fact, making it more difficult for him to answer. However, to the Library of Heaven's Path this was nothing at all. Zhang Xian looked at him, seemingly nonchalant to his actions. If I'm not wrong, Apothecary Chen Xiao should have trouble sleeping and eating recently. Ah. Apothecary Chen Xiao was taken aback. It's true that I have been having problems sleeping, and my appetite isn't good recently. However, this should have nothing to do with pill forging though. So what if I don't eat or sleep? You just have to tell me about the flaws in my pill forging. Why are you telling me about my body condition? Besides about me not sleeping well and having no appetite, how did you know about it? Nothing to do with it. You're wrong. It is related to it in every way. Zhang Xian shook his head. Related to it in every way? Enlighten me. Apothecary Chen Xiao couldn't help but look over. He, if I'm not wrong, you are about to die. Zhang Xian said. Chapter 111, Death or a Poo. He thought that the other party would speak of some theory to convince him of it. Hearing his words, however, Apothecary Chen Xiao almost puked blood. Just because I'm not eating or sleeping well, you say that I'm going to die. You're the one who is going to die, your family is the one who is going to die, not just him. The other examiners also glared at him furiously. Apothecary Chen Xiao was an esteemed figure in the circle of apothecaries and they had always respected him. Yet, this fellow dared to curse him straight to his face. Do you dare to spout any more nonsense? I have been an apothecary for many years. Even though I have been stuck at this level for very long, I have been working diligently and studying hard to improve myself. I might not be a talented genius, but I am well aware of my body's condition. The reason why I haven't been sleeping well and eating well is because of the numerous miscellaneous affairs in my household I tend recently. There hasn't been anything off about my physical condition other than that. So, why do you say that I'm about to die? Apothecary Chen Xiao harumphed. Apothecaries often came into contact with medicinal pills, and even though they were inferior to physicians in terms of diagnosing, they were still slightly learned in the aspect. You aren't wrong. There isn't anything wrong with your body. Zhang Xian calmly replied to the suspicions he rose. Nothing wrong. Then, what are you talking about? How spiteful, how can you take these words as a joke? This is a pill debate, not a session for you to curse Apothecary Chen Xiao. Upon hearing him admit that there was nothing wrong with Apothecary Chen Xiao's body, everyone started to bellow at him angrily. If there was something wrong with his body, they could let this matter slip. However, since there was nothing wrong with his body, how could such nonsense be acceptable? Feeling baffled, Ouyang Cheng and the others stared at him. He. Zhang Xian was completely nonchalant to the rebuke of the crowd. He simply smiled lightly and said, "Who says that one cannot die if there's nothing wrong with their body? What do you mean?" Upon seeing his calmness and confidence, Apothecary Chen Xiao felt goosebumps rising all over him. Just as he was about to continue questioning him, Zhang Xian waved his hands and said, "Since you don't believe me, let's first take a look at the pill." At which, the eyes of the crowd fixated on the Tranquil heart pill Apothecary Chen Xiao had just forged. Apothecary Chen Xiao is a level-headed and calm person. He has reached a high level of mastery in his skills in forging pills, and if I were to forcibly speak of a flaw of his, none of you will believe me. It would be troublesome to verify my claims as well. Zhang Xian smiled. Since that's the case, I won't talk about the flaws in his forging method. I shall just talk about this pill here. Just like the one Apothecary Meng Yan forged, if this Tranquil heart pill is consumed by a cultivator, it would aggravate his anxiety and even cause his death. What? I have been examining Apothecary Chen Xiao's method in forging the pills closely, and there isn't the slightest mistake in his actions. Furthermore, his pill has reached the level of perfection, so how can it worsen one's anxiety? This isn't a place for you to spout nonsense. No one believed Zhang Xian's words at all. The reason why there was a problem with the Tranquil heart pill that Meng Yan forged was because he killed his concubine, resulting in the killing intent in his body to billow such that even he was unable to curb it. On the other hand, Apothecary Chen Xiao had a calm nature, which was compatible with the state of mind one required to forge Tranquil heart pill. If so, how could it worsen one's anxiety? Even if you wish to spout nonsense, you should have had something better to say. If you don't believe me, we can try it out. There are pill sample beasts here. Zhang Xian pointed to the cage. Other than the two that were exercising together, there were still other pill sample beasts in the cage which were lying calmly by the side. Let's give it a try then. An apothecary who didn't believe his words casually picked up a tranquil heart pill and placed it into the mouth of a pill sample beast. After consuming the tranquil heart beast, the pill sample beast didn't get agitated as the previous one did. It also didn't grab another one of its kind to exercise on it. Instead, it laid by a corner, not moving at all. How is it? A tranquil heart pill can calm a person's mental state. The lack of movement in this pill sample beast means that the pill is taking effect. What else do you have to say? The apothecary harumphed. The others also looked toward Zhang Xian. Previously, Zhang Xian said that consuming this heart pill beast would worsen one's anxiety. Now, it was clear that the pill was working as it should and there wasn't anything queer about it. They were curious to see how he would answer. Give it a moment. Zhang Xian didn't say anything else and simply sat quietly on his chair. After 10 minutes, the pill sample beast still didn't move at all. At this point, the apothecary who fed the pill sample beast the pill couldn't hold it in any longer. See, it hasn't moved at all. This clearly shows that the tranquil heart pill is working as it should. Are you trying to waste our time by having us wait? It's okay now. Zhang Xian said. It's okay. The apothecary frowned. What do you mean? It is clear that this pill sample beast isn't anxious in the least given how it is still lying quietly by the corner. How do you want us to see? The reason why it is lying quietly by the corner doesn't necessarily mean that the tranquil heart pill has taken effect. It can also mean that it is dead. Zhang Xian said. Dead? The apothecary was taken aback. He immediately rushed forward, opened the cage and grabbed the pill sample beast out. With a single glance, his eyes narrowed abruptly. How is this possible? The pill sample beast in his hand had already breathed its last. Its body was already starting to turn cold. How long had it been? To turn cold within 10 minutes, it meant that it had died a short moment after consuming the pill. It's really dead. The tranquil heart pill should only calm a person's spirits, so why would it kill a pill sample beast? A pill sample beast's constitution is suited for testing pills. It is impossible for ordinary pills to kill it. What is going on? A commotion broke out. After eating a tranquil heart pill, the pill sample beast died? If a cultivator were to consume it, wouldn't it mean his demise as well? Apothecary Chen Zhao's complexion darkened. He retreated several steps consecutively and disbelief could be seen in his eyes. This is impossible. I followed the forging method strictly, there isn't the slightest error in it. Even if I fail to form a pill, it shouldn't turn into poison. Why was the pill sample beast poisoned to death? It was a huge crime for an apothecary to poison someone to death through the pills he forged. He had never met with such an incident throughout his entire life, so why was all of these occurring now? Zhang Xian, what's going on? With a bewildered expression, Cheng sought clarification. At this point, everyone's gazes also focused on Zhang Xian. He was able to tell the problem in this tranquil heart pill and he knew that the pill sample beast would die. Who else was more appropriate to explain the situation other than him? I have already revealed the flaw in his forging method, so I should have already passed this test. Do I really have to explain it? Zhang Xian didn't reply Cheng. Instead, he turned to look at Apothecary Qin Shao. He was able to identify the problem in the pill and he successfully pointed it out. This bore testimony to his abilities and in this clash between him and Apothecary Qin Shao, he could be considered to be the victor. If you explain the situation, I am willing to admit defeat. Apothecary Qin Shao gritted his teeth. Even if Zhang Xian were to win in this clash, as long as Qin Shao didn't admit defeat, he would be able to conduct a round of examination. As the oldest one of the 10 apothecaries, his surrender would cause the confidence of the others to waver. As such, this matter was of utmost importance. If that's the case, then allow me to speak more on the matter. Zhang Xian nodded his head. There are no problems with the sequence and technique you forged the Tranquil Heart pill with. In fact, you even infused your own tranquility into the pill. Rationally speaking, the pill should be of extremely high quality with high effectiveness. However, it's a pity that you are about to die. Your body is already filled with death aura and naturally, the pill you forge will come into contact with this aura as well. This is the reason why the pill sample beast died upon consuming the pill you forged. Chapter 112, Cheng Jiang, could it be that I am really going to die? Apothecary Chen Zhao's mouth quivered and his entire body shivered slightly. The first time Zhang Xian said these words, he thought that the other party was cursing him, so he didn't pay it any heed. However, upon seeing the pill sample beast die upon consuming the pills he forged, he was rattled. Even more so, he felt fear. Seeing him in such a state, everyone felt bad for him. They wanted to console him, but they couldn't find the right words to say. If he weren't on the verge of death, how could a pill sample beast die just like that from eating the pill he forged? It was clear that what the other party said was true. I have explained what I should. Who wants to challenge me next? Zhang Xian scanned the surroundings. No. Brother Zhang Xian, don't be in such a hurry. Apothecary Chen Shao couldn't hold it in any longer and looked to him in panic. Instead of addressing him as a lad, he addressed him as brother now. Why? Is Apothecary Chen Shao unable to accept the results and would like to experiment once more? Zhang Xian looked over. No, I want to learn, how will I die? If you can tell me the truth, I am willing to have my body smashed to smithereens to repay this favor to you. Apothecary Chen Shao pleaded. There weren't any problems with his body. Even if his appetite dwindled and his quality of sleep decreased, it shouldn't cause his death. As the person in question, how could he know nothing when he was already on the verge of death? I will tell you honestly then. Even though there were no mistakes in your skill and movements when you were forging the pill, your body is slightly stiff. It is clear that your vitality and strength aren't what they used to be. Most important of all, parts of your skin have started to turn gray, similar to the livor mortis that appears on corpses. If I'm not wrong, you have applied a special kind of medicine on your skin to conceal it from sight. In actuality, your entire body is already speckled with gray spots. Zhang Xian looked over with piercing eyes. Looking as though he had been struck by lightning, Apothecary Chen Zhao's eyes narrowed as he retreated backward in fear. Just like what the other party said, there were spots on his body. He thought that it was a kind of rare disease and he intended to find time to seek out Master Yuanyu and have him take a look. After all, it didn't hurt or itch, so he didn't pay much attention to it. To think that it would be livor mortis. Sir, please save me. Suppressing his gasps of shock and fear, Apothecary Chen Shao no longer held any doubt for the other party's words. He clasped his hands together and pleaded. His address also changed from brother to sir. Regardless of who it was and how long he has lived, no one wished to die, especially when death appeared before them. Everyone would seek any means to live on. Have you obtained some treasure recently? If I'm not wrong, you probably took it from a corpse. I shall not explain any further. If you wish to live longer, it is best that you not touch it anymore. Zhang Xian waved his hand. I will end my advice here. Good luck. You. Hearing his words, Apothecary Chen Shao froze once more. What the other party said was true. He had obtained a cauldron recently and it was much better than the one he had been using. He had been treating it as a precious treasure, stroking it daily. If he could, he would even sleep beside it every day. This cauldron was taken from the hands of a corpse, one that had departed not too long ago. This person gave him the cauldron in hopes that he would take revenge for him. However, his enemy was way too powerful, so he only agreed to do so casually back then. He did not intend to exact vengeance in his stead. After which, the person died and he no longer bothered about the matter. Could he mean, this cauldron? He obtained his cauldron clandestinely, not even his family members knew of it. How did he know of it? Apothecary Chen Xiao took a good look at the young man before him once more. This time, agitation could be seen on his face, as though staring at a specter. Alright, who's the next one? Ignoring the elder, Zhang Xian turned to look at the other 8 remaining examiners. Actually, Chen Xiao was inflicted with not an illness but a curse. He agreed to seek vengeance in another's stead, and in exchange, the other party gave him his most precious treasure. However, he went against his words and the other party predicted that he would do so. As such, he imprinted the curse on the cauldron. If he got close to it, his life would be gnawed away. Even though it wouldn't cause any illness or side effects, his lifespan would reduce tremendously. Unless he made up his mind to exact vengeance for the other party. Of course, Zhang Xian wouldn't say these words out loud. Putting aside the fact that he had barely met Apothecary Chen Xiao and wasn't indebted to him, more importantly, the other party was an ungrateful person. He made promises but didn't fulfill them. Zhang Xian despised these kinds of people. After consecutively getting 2 apothecaries to admit defeat, none of the other examiners volunteered to take him on. No matter how foolish the other 8 were, it was clear at this point that Zhang Xian was someone with true ability. For a long time, the entire hall was silent and no one dared to step forward. If none of you wish to continue the pill debate, please admit defeat and declare me the victor. Zhang Xian smiled. Tranquil heart pill requires your heart to be calm to forge. Under usual circumstances, you need to adjust your state of mind for 3 days through consuming vegetarian meals and cleansing yourself with water. Given how they had to forge the pill out of a sudden without making the necessary adjustments in their state of mind, it is natural that the pills they forged would be affected by their emotions. As long as we avoid forging such pills, he should be unable to point out any flaws. Indeed. Only the forging of Tranquil heart pill is affected by your emotions and state of mind. The effects of such for other pills are minimal, so it will do as long as we do not forge Tranquil heart pills. Muttering broke out among the crowd and soon a voice rang out. I will face him. An apothecary stood up. It was a middle-aged man about the same age as Du Man. He had a square-shaped face and his eyes shone with determination and calm. It's Apothecary Jiang. He is the apothecary who possesses the greatest potential among us all. Just within 3 years of becoming an apothecary, he was already able to forge more than a dozen kinds of pills. With sufficient time, there is a high possibility of him surpassing guild leader Ouyang. Nothing will go wrong since he's the one making the move. The eyes of the crowd lit up. Initially, everyone was resolute to pulling this Zhang Xian lad off his high horse. Yet 2 apothecaries, Meng Yan and Qin Xiao, who challenged him had fallen to him. This struck a blow at their confidence and they urgently needed someone to boost their morale. Zhang Xian, you were able to notice the slightest details in the previous 2 clashes, to the point of even discerning an apothecary's vitality, emotional state and mental state. I am impressed. Walking out, Apothecary Jiang nodded his head in approval with a smile. I am unworthy of your praise. Zhang Xian replied. You were even able to discern the killing intent from Apothecary Meng Yan. If I were to forge a Tranquil heart pill, my flaws would surely be unable to escape from your notice. Thus, if I may propose presumptuously, I would like to increase the difficulty of the challenge. I wonder if you're brave enough to accept. Apothecary Jiang said. I am willing to listen to the details. Upon hearing that the other party wanted to increase the difficulty of the challenge, Zhang Xian looked interested. I have just created a new pill forging technique and come up with a name for it a few days ago. I have not displayed it to anyone before. If I gave this problem to you, even if you are learned in all methods that have existed since immemorial times, you will surely find it hard to answer. Apothecary Jiang said. Thus, I contemplated and decided against having you give the name of my technique. As long as you can name 3 pill forging techniques I referenced from, I am willing to admit defeat. Creating a new pill forging technique? Incredible. Pill forging techniques were similar to the battle techniques of a fighter. Those who could create one of their own were definitely talented individuals, people who left their mark on history. As long as they did not burn out before their time was up, it was just a matter of time before they made a name for themselves. Upon hearing his words, the other apothecaries looked at him, full of admiration. Apothecary Cheng sure is remarkable. This question is truly difficult. Indeed. Since it is a brand new pill forging technique, it is bound to be different from the originals. Compared to pointing out the flaws in pill forging techniques, to identify the references in a newly created pill forging technique, 3 at that, the difficulty is much greater. This time, Zhang Xian will most probably be defeated. Of course, this is such a difficult question. Even a 3-star apothecary would be stumped by it, much less an apprentice apothecary. The crowd couldn't help but lament Zhang Xian's predicament. In some Chinese religions and culture, eating meat can be considered to be a sin due to the bloodshed resulted in its production. Sometimes it's associated with state of mind. Those who consume meat tend to be more short-tempered, whereas those who consume vegetarian meals tend to be calmer. Chapter 113, Forging Technique. Telling the references from a complete pill forging technique, using an analogy, was like creating a solution of water from numerous wells and demanding for another to identify the origin of the water. It was an impossible task. Unless one witnessed him creating the pill forging technique step by step, it would be impossible to identify 3 references. The difficulty of the task Jiang proposed, compared to simply finding the flaws in a pill forging technique, was at least 5 times harder. Zhang Xian's eyes narrowed. As expected of the apothecaries, they weren't as easy to deal with as he expected. This fellow might be a bundle of smiles and look magnanimous. However, he was truly the most shameless of the group. Even if Zhang Xian agreed, identifying the references in a pill forging technique was basically an impossible task. Given how Zhang Xian raised the difficulty earlier, the privilege should be extended to the other party as well. If he disagreed with it, other people might criticize him because of that in the future, thus leaving a stain on his reputation. Why? I know that this is a difficult matter to ask, and it is normal that you will reject me. However, if you reject my offer, can I consider it your loss? Jiang grinned widely. Loss? Zhang Xian shook his head. It just happens that I would like to see Apothecary Cheng's new forging technique. Let's begin. This method of his would normally be effective against other people, making them fly into a panic. However, it was ineffective against Zhang Xian. The reason why Zhang Xian could identify flaws in the pill forging techniques of others wasn't because of his discernment ability. Rather, it was because he possessed the Library of Heaven's Path. As long as the library remained with him, regardless of whatever forging technique, whether it was just created or yet to be created, they would all be clearly displayed in the form of a book. This was no problem for him at all. All right. Seeing him agree to it, a gleam flashed across Apothecary Jiang's eyes. The corners of his lips crept upwards as he gathered the necessary medicinal herbs and headed to the cauldron. Walala! The medicinal herbs flew in the air. His every action was fluid and elegant. Looking it from afar, there was a unique sense of aesthetics to it. It is indeed a new forging technique. I have never seen it before. If I'm not mistaken, he is forging Jushi Pill. Yes. Jushi Pill is useful to people of cultivation realms below Fighter 7 Dan. It is exceptionally useful for those in the Jushi realm. It isn't a valuable pill in comparison to the others, but it is one of the most useful ones to the fighters. Usually, this is the pill apprentice apothecaries will practice for the pill forging examination. As such, most apothecaries are extremely familiar with the method to forging it. This is also the reason why Apothecary Jiang is able to better showcase the uniqueness of his forging technique. Furthermore, his motions are more fluid, making it difficult for others to discern the references. In any case, I am unable to tell the pill forging techniques he referenced from. Me neither. The apothecaries watched Jiang for a moment before shaking their heads. Apothecary Cheng sure is vicious. Standing by the side, Cheng shook his head. Given his standard as a one-star apothecary, he is able to forge the most basic juicy pill easily with fluid motions, making it difficult for others to discern the forging method easily. Furthermore, given the short time required to forge it, you couldn't analyze it even if you wanted to. Looks like Zhang Xian will probably fail here. Apothecary Jiang could forge more difficult grade 1 pills, but it would be troublesome for him. He couldn't forge them as easily as he could the juicy pill. This was just like how Yang Guo could wield the heavy iron sword, but he was unable to control it as freely as he wished. On the other hand, if he forged the most basic juicy pill, it was like Yang Guo wielding an ordinary sword instead, effortless. This apothecary Jiang may have had a wide smile on his face, but he was actually the most scheming of them all. Not only were his movements fast in forging juicy pill, the time required to forge it was also short. A normal grade 1 pill would take at least half an hour to forge. On the other hand, juicy pill could be forged in less than 15 minutes. Seeing 3 references in such a short period of time. How was that possible? It was clear that he is intended to do in Zhang Xian. Is he going to fail? Upon hearing Cheng's judgment, Wen Shui clenches her fists tightly. It should be difficult for him to pass this test. Cheng sighed. Interesting. Initially, he didn't bear any ill intent for this Jiang. However, he didn't expect this fellow to be so despicable and use such low-handed methods. Zhang Xian's gaze turned icy. As a cultured, knowledgeable, ambitious, and worldly transcender, how could he allow others to bully him without trying to retaliate? Who? Finally, the juicy pill was successfully forged. A total of 7 or 8 pills rolled out from the cauldron. I am done forging. Zhang Xian, please. Apothecary Jiang looked at him and chuckled with confidence. It was true that his forging technique had more than 3 references to other forging techniques. However, his movements just now were extremely fast and fluid. It was almost an impossible task for the other party to see through any of them. Besides, even if the other party was right, he could deny it. There are so many forging techniques, and naturally, given how no one here could see through the references behind his forging technique, it was up to him to say whatever he wanted. For a brat who came from some remote corner to use me as a stepping stone to achieve victory in the pill debate. Dream on. If I can point out 3 references in your forging technique, will you admit defeat? Zhang Xian looked at him with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Of course. I am an official apothecary. Given my standing, there is no reason I would go back on my words just to deal with an apprentice apothecary. Apothecary Jiang flung his sleeves haughtily. Arrogance exuded from his tone. Great. Since you have put it like that, then this matter is simple. Zhang Xian nodded his head and walked forward. He circled around the cauldron once before lowering his head to look at the juicy pill in his hand. He pinched one and held it up, placed it before his nose, and took a whiff of its scent. This juicy pill has vibrant colors and a radiant outer appearance. Going by conventional standards, it should have already reached perfection. Zhang Xian complimented. However, his tone abruptly changed. However, due to the limitations of Apothecary Cheng's forging technique, perfection is already the limit. It is impossible for him to forge an inscribed pill. It is just a juicy pill, what's the use of forging an inscribed pill? Apothecary Jiang scoffed. This juicy pill was the most basic pill an apothecary could forge. It increased the rate at which a fighter could gather spiritual energy from the surroundings. It was a waste of an inscribed pill to occur in this kind of fundamental pill. That's true. Zhang Xian nodded his head, reluctant to tug with him on this matter. Instead, he smiled and continued, the question I should answer is with regards to your forging technique. There is no point debating this topic. Alright, since it's a request on your part, I will answer your question. Putting aside the forging techniques you have referenced previously, let's first talk about how many forging techniques you know. With this, it should be easier to conclude which are the few forging techniques you referenced from. 3 years ago, Apothecary Jiang used Rain of 10,000 Streams to forge a Grade 1 Vitality Rejuvenation pill to pass the Apothecary examinations. In the same year, you learned Convergence of the North River and successfully forged Soul-Soothing Pill. The spring of the second year, during Apothecary by Ming's birthday celebration, you sneaked into his study and coaxed his illusory silk hands with which you forged Body Nourishment Pill. From then on, your reputation spread far and wide. That winter, when you asked Apothecary Lin Mu to demonstrate his frost-threaded hands, you secretly took it for yourself. In the summer last year, you spent 50,000 gold coins to bribe Apothecary Jean Chen's butler to duplicate a copy of Golden Spring Fleeting Cloud Dexterity. In the third month of last year, you enticed Du Man's apothecary apprentice Zhu Huahua and obtained Apothecary Du's personal forging technique 100 intertwining method. Now, if I added them up, Rain of 10,000 Streams, Convergence of the North River. Summing together all of these forging techniques, there are a total of 12 of them. Zhang Xian counted slowly as though counting his own precious treasures. After that, he turned around to look at the apothecary whose face had paled at some point. Apothecary Jiang, are there any mistakes with what I said? You. Jiang stumbled backward. His eyes narrowed, as though he had seen a freak. Yang Gua is a character from Return of the Condor Heroes by Jin Yong. In the novel, after his hand was chopped off by Guofu, he was saved by a condor and chances upon the grave of a great swordsman, Dugu Qiubai. There are 4 swords there, one of them being the heavy iron sword. The sword is known for being extremely heavy and difficult to utilize in battle. Yang Gua took a long time before he managed to gain control of it. Chapter 114, Convergence of 10,000 Tributaries, What? Jiang, is what he said true? I demonstrated the skill to you out of kindness, and you secretly picked up my frost-threaded hands? Damn it, no wonder I wasn't able to find you for a long time after the banquet started. Confess, when did you sneak into my study? Jiang, we are fellow apothecaries. If you wish to learn my forging technique, you could have asked me sincerely for it and I might have taught it to you. Yet you chose to entice my apprentice with benefits to obtain my 100 intertwining method. Aren't you being too underhanded? A pill forging technique was similar to a fighter's battle techniques. Most of them were exclusive to a certain clan or sect and mustn't be taught to outsiders lightly. This Jiang actually secretly learned the forging techniques of other apothecaries without their permission, even resorting to stealing to obtain them. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, the entire room burst into outrage. Everyone here was a member of the Apothecary Guild and they often exchanged knowledge on the art of pill forging. If he was truly interested in learning their pill forging method, he could indicate his interest, conduct a ceremony to acknowledge the other party as his mentor, and learn their skills. Then their relationship could be annulled and they would still be friends. However, secretly learning in this manner was akin to a fighter stealing the battle techniques of other experts. It was a huge taboo that one should never commit. Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. Sensing the heated atmosphere, anger and fear flashed across Jiang's face as he hurriedly tried to absolve himself from the accusations. I'm spouting nonsense. Zhang Xian walked forward. The corners of his lips crept upwards. Just now, to forge Jushi pill, Apothecary Cheng took a total of 23 medicinal herbs. I shouldn't be mistaken on this aspect. You're right. All certified apothecaries were aware of the medicinal herbs required to forge Jushi pill. This wasn't a secret, thus there was no need to deny it. When you mixed white lotus grass, wisteria root, and golden river flower together, your pinky was angled backward whereas the tip was bent forward, as though picking a flower. If I'm not wrong, this method is referenced from Apothecary by Ming's illusory silk hands. Afterwards, when you extracted the green sun essence, your 5 fingers opened wide with which you gently stroked the herb, as though extracting frigid air from ice, not daring to exert too much strength. This should be referenced from Apothecary Lin Mu's frost-threaded hands. Then, when you added purple osmond grass and white mane flower in, to prevent the properties of the two from clashing with one another, you specially circled them twice around the cauldron before throwing them in. Through doing so, not only would the medicinal properties of both be better utilized, they would only lose their violent nature. As such, their properties would not clash with one another. Apothecary Jean Chen's golden spring fleeting cloud dexterity seems identical to this move of yours. After that, when the pill was forged, in order to prevent it from coming into contact with the searing cauldron, you used Jinqi to produce a unique air net with your hands. Even though your movements are inconspicuous, if someone watches closely, they are still recognizable. Apothecary Du Man, isn't that similar to your 100 intertwining method? Zhang Xian didn't allow the other party to refute his words at all, dumping it all out en masse. At this point, he paused for a moment as he smiled brightly. If Apothecary Cheng thinks what that I just said is nonsense and that I made it all up, the record crystal has been recording the entire procedure and we can look through it any time. Everyone can bear testimony to whether the words I've been saying are nonsense. You. Cheng Jiang's face paled and his entire body trembled uncontrollably. He knew that what the other party said was completely true. Apothecaries had their own schools and inheritances. In order to improve swiftly, he went around stealing other people's techniques. He thought that he had done it very secretly. How did this fellow know? Furthermore, down to the very details. In an instant, he felt like he was standing nude before everyone else. A deep feeling of fear rose from the depths of his heart. What? Do you still think I'm spouting nonsense? Ignoring the other party whose face had paled to the extreme at this moment, Zhang Xian stepped forward. If you think there's any mistake in what I've said, is this forging technique that you self-created through merging everyone's forging techniques called Convergence of 10,000 Tributaries? You're a demon. Apothecary Cheng Jiang staggered and fell to the floor. The name he had come up with for this forging technique was indeed Convergence of 10,000 Tributaries. It was a name he had come up with a few days ago and he had yet to tell anyone about it. In fact, not even his apprentices knew of it, so why does the other party know the name? To be able to see through everything down to the very details such that him stealing the other people's forging technique was unable to escape his eyes. Was this fellow a demon? How can this be? Apothecary Cheng Jiang was terrified. Convergence of 10,000 tributaries, you utilized all of the different techniques to forge that river of yours. How arrogant. It sure is an incredible forging technique. To steal our forging techniques, integrate them together as one and claim that you have created a new forging technique. Cheng Jiang, you sure are capable. To think that I've regarded you as my brother and my best buddy, yet you chose to do this to me. Fine. From now on, our relationship is severed. Upon seeing the expression on Cheng Jiang's face and recalling the movements he made while forging the pill recently, they would truly be fools if they were still unable to understand the situation. The faces of the apothecaries here turned red in fury. Their wrathful eyes fixated on Cheng Jiang. They weren't exceptionally skilled apothecaries and their forging techniques were not really secrets that must not be leaked to the outside. But, this fellow, if he had expressed his desire to learn their techniques, getting rejected wasn't really a big deal. However, his actions of learning their techniques behind their back was definitely something an apothecary should never do. Not only that, he had even arrogantly bragged that he had created a new technique by himself. Created, your head. You simply took all of our techniques to form a hodgepodge. You call that creating a new technique? If that's so, Everyone would be creating new techniques every day. Not to mention, naming it Convergence of 10,000 Tributaries. How can anyone be that shameless? At this point, they no longer viewed Jiang as their equal. Disgust was the only thing that could be seen on their faces. Please calm down. Upon seeing the indignation of the crowd, Jiang smiled. He interjected into their commotion and turned to look at Jiang, who was still in a state of disbelief. Apothecary Jiang, is this considered my victory? You. Seeing his smile, Apothecary Jiang shuddered. You win. I admit defeat. He has no choice but to admit defeat. The other party's ability to discern had already reached the level of demons. He feared that if he continued competing with him, more of his secrets would be revealed. As such, he could only hurriedly nod his head. At this moment, he regretted his action of intentionally making things difficult for the other party. Even though the other party had pointed out the flaws in Meng Yan and Chen Zhao's pill forging, he had clearly spared their dignity. Yet he sent a slap directly at his face, exposing his darkest secret in public. It was foreseeable that once news of these matters spread, he would lose his standing within Tianxian Kingdom's Apothecary Guild. He would be shunned and viewed with contempt by all. All credibility and reputation he had built up throughout the years would be completely destroyed, and others would just think of him as a fraud and villain. Upon his surrender, Jiang smiled. Initially, he didn't have any serious conflict with any of them, so he couldn't be bothered with the other party's personality flaws. Yet, this fellow tried to take advantage of the situation to force him into a corner. You want to humiliate me? Try it then. As a transcender with a golden ring, how can I allow myself to be humiliated by you like this? Since you decided to charge straight at me, don't blame me for not going easy on you. It just happens that I can use you to warn the others that I, Jiang, am not an easy target. Apothecary Cheng has admitted defeat. Jiang surveyed the surroundings. Anyone else? In that instant, the room fell utterly silent. Chapter 115, Acupoint Soothing Pill. Even though the person in front of them had only pointed out the flaws in the pill forging techniques of 3 apothecaries, the abilities he had revealed in doing so induced fear and terror in the remaining few. Not just them, even Chen Zhang's swift and fluid actions, factoring in the short duration he took to forge the pill, were clearly seen through by Jiang, who had also analyzed the origin of his movements, and deduced that he had stolen the forging techniques of others. That ability of discernment and knowledge of his was something none of the people here could match up to. 3 apothecaries have admitted defeat, 7 more to go. Who will go first? Seeing all of them silence, Jiang continued to stare at them. Pill debate required 10 apothecaries to admit their defeat before Jiang could be declared victorious. This silence continued to linger about the remaining 7 apothecaries. It was one thing if the other party's ability to discern matters was impressive, but of the 3 apothecaries he faced previously, one was exposed for being cuckolded, one turned out to be on the verge of death, and the last one had his reputation tarnished. They were only here for the pill debate. They didn't want their secrets exposed because of this. The other party's ability to discern was so incredible that he could immediately tell a difference if their state of mind was in the slightest bit off. Given such circumstances, who would still dare to challenge him? Furthermore, they couldn't admit defeat without competing in pill debate. If they did so, it was equivalent to going easy on the other party, which was considered as an act of cheating. Once revealed, they would be stripped of their apothecary qualification. As such, the awkward silence continued to linger in the atmosphere as no one dared to step forward. Please hurry up. We can't possibly continue to drag this matter on like this. Sensing the awkward atmosphere lingering about, Cheng couldn't help saying, I'll go. After a momentary silence, Apothecary Du Man stood up. He was acquainted with Jiang and had even bet over him. What he thought to be an arrogant fellow turned out to be a figure with incredible capability and outstanding discernment ability. Even he himself was far from a match for him in this aspect. However, he didn't have a choice either way. After all, they couldn't continue stalling time here like this. Apothecary Du Man, allow me to go instead. Just as Du Man was about to start forging so that Zhang Xian could point out the flaws in the process, an elder stood up. It's Apothecary by Ming. Just now, Zhang Xian exposed that Jiang had secretly learned his illusory silk hands. He was extremely furious. Why would he make a move now? I have no idea. Let's watch. Upon seeing this elder, the others shuddered. Even though Apothecary by Ming wasn't the oldest of the group, he was the most qualified and respected one. That was because he wasn't just a mere apothecary, he was also the de facto head of one of the 4 great clans in Tianxian City, the Bai clan. He was a person who held great authority and strength in his hands. Since Apothecary Bai is going to make a move, I'll back down first. Apothecary Du Man returned to his seat. He was unable to match up to Bai Ming in terms of qualifications and standing. Zhang Xian, you possess incredible ability of discernment and analysis. However, you just happen to be lucky. In actuality, you don't really possess much knowledge on pill forging. After the examiner had been confirmed, Bai Ming glanced at Zhang Xian, his tone hostile. It was no wonder that he was so angry. While he was angry at Jiang for stealing the secret manual passed down within his family, being exposed in public also made him feel humiliated. After all, it was shameful for the powerful Bai clan to be unable to prevent a lone apothecary from stealing from them. If word spread, the Bai clan would become a laughingstock. Lucky? Why would Apothecary Bai say that? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Simple. Regardless of whether it was Meng Yan, Chen Shao, or Jiang, the flaws you said may seem to make sense. However, if we think deeper into things, it was also possible for you to have investigated their personality flaws and the recent happenings around them beforehand, and worked backward to infer the flaws in their forging techniques. Bai Ming harumphed. Worked backward? Now that Apothecary Bai said so, it does make sense. Indeed. For example, in Meng Yan's case, if you knew he killed his concubine in the morning in advance and that he had killing intent and rage within him, you could safely deduce that the Tranquil heart pill he forged would be ineffective. The same for Apothecary Chen Shao as well. If you knew he was sick and didn't have much time to live, you could infer that there would be a problem with the pills. After all, the Tranquil heart pill reflects the forger's state of mind. Even a pig could tell that something would be wrong with those pills if it had heard of that information beforehand. Now that you all have put it in such a way, it truly explains a lot of things. If he had made preparations beforehand and dug up the matter of Jiang stealing our forging techniques, it would be a simple matter to guess the references in his forging technique. Bai Ming's words were like a rock thrown in water, generating countless ripples on the surface. Everyone came to a realization, seemingly understanding what had just happened. It was because they were unable to understand how the other party was able to see through those flaws that they felt fear. Now that they understood the reason, the fear they felt vanished. In fact, if they of this information beforehand, they could also make the same judgment that Zhang Xian did on the flaws of the forging techniques of the previous 3. Oh. Working backward? What an interesting thought. He didn't expect Apothecary Bai Ming's imagination to be so vivid. Smirking, Zhang Xian continued, regardless of what methods I used, I can pass as long as I can identify the flaws in your forging techniques. Indeed. It will be your win if you manage to see through the flaws in my forging technique. However, I want to change the rules as well. Apothecary Bai Ming said. Oh. The gist of it will still be the same, I will forge a pill while you identify a mistake in my forging technique. However, I want you to point out true mistakes in my forging process, such as in my skills, ability to control flames, and the way I mixed the medicinal herbs together rather than involving emotions and other miscellaneous stuff. This way, you can't use the knowledge you know of beforehand to work backward to identify the flaws in my forging technique. Bai Ming harumphed. That's right. This way, he won't be able to talk about emotions and the sort. With these rules, he can't work backward to deduce the flaws even if he wants to. This is what I call pointing out flaws. The apothecaries nodded their heads in agreement. To speak the truth, everyone had been frightened by Zhang Xian's ability to point out the flaws in them. As a cultivator, charging forward and emerging victorious among millions of people, who hadn't done anything against their conscience before. It would be embarrassing if this lad were to reveal their darkest secrets. Thus, the new rule that Apothecary by Ming came up with immediately received everyone's approval. He was only allowed to point out flaws in pill forging. Bringing in external matters such as murder or being on the verge of death was prohibited. Even if they were apothecaries, such scares weren't what humans could handle. Are you certain? Upon hearing the rules set by the other party, how could Zhang Xian possibly remain oblivious to what they were thinking? One corner of Zhang Xian's mouth curved upwards. Of course. Apothecary by Ming flung his sleeves. Now, it is a question of whether you're brave enough to accept the challenge. Zhang Xian could not be bothered to argue with him over the matter. Great. Seeing him agree to it, Apothecary by Ming heaved a sigh of relief. After pondering for a moment, he grabbed a few ingredients and walked to the cauldron. Fwoosh boosh. The fire started burning furiously and Apothecary by Ming began his pill forging. Not too long after, the fire weakened and 3 round pills were extracted from the cauldron. Grade 1 pill, Acupoint Soothing Pill. It was specially prepared for Fighter 6 Dan experts to soothe their acupoints, allowing them to travel further in the Pixue realm. Back then, Elder Shang Chen spent a huge price to purchase one for Shang Bin. The latter gave it to the sky-shattering lion as the cost of teaching Zhang Xian a lesson. Even so, the sky-shattering lion eventually betrayed him, filling Shang Bin with resentment against it. No matter what, the Acupoint Soothing Acupoint was considered one of the superior grade 1 pills, something that Tranquil Heart Pill was far from matching up to. Amazing. Only Apothecary by Ming possesses such capabilities. To think that he could successfully forge a Acupoint Soothing Pill under such circumstances. It is extremely difficult to forge an Acupoint Soothing Pill. Even more so, Apothecary by Ming's forging technique is so complex that I have never seen it before. Now I am curious to see what Zhang Xian will say. Hehe, let's wait for the show then. Upon seeing Apothecary by Ming forging an Acupoint Soothing Pill, most of the apothecaries present laughed. The higher grade a pill was, the more complex the method required to forge it. Acupoint Soothing Pill could be considered one of the higher grade pills among the grade 1 tier, and its forging method was incomparably complex. Even the rest of them were unable to perceive any mistakes in his forging technique, so how could an apprentice possibly see anything? Alright, I'm done forging the pill. Tell me, what's the name of the forging technique and the flaws in it? Sneering, Apothecary by Ming brought his breathing back to normal and gestured grandly. Even though I don't know where you got the information on us, but if you wish to successfully pass a pill debate depending solely on that, dream on. Without true capability to point out the flaws in a forging technique, you will never earn my respect. Are you sure you want me to say? A peculiar expression appeared on Zhang Xian's face as he said those words. Quit trying to mystify things here. If you can't find the words, just admit defeat. Apothecary by Ming harumphed. Alright then. Zhang Xian shook his head. With his hands behind his back, he slowly walked to the center of the room. The forging technique you used is called Thousand Mountain Hands and is said to have been created by a 2-star apothecary named Feng Xian. You must put the medicinal herb into the cauldron based on a special sequence, similar to the mountainous regions, one mountain after another like you're traversing the lands. Similarly, you throw the medicinal herbs in wave after wave. The way you control the fire is also based on such a sequence, strong at one moment, weak at the other. By forging pills in such a method, it is easier for the medicinal properties to fuse together and thus makes it likelier that a pill is formed. However, its flaws are also clear to see. It's difficult to raise the quality of the pill itself. Therefore, even though you manage to forge 3 Acupoint soothing pills successfully, they are of the lowest level. It is nearly impossible for you to reach satiation. Such forging techniques are only suitable for the mass production of pills by low-skilled apothecaries. Put bluntly, none of the slightly better apothecaries would learn such a skill, because it means putting a barrier in front of their future path. No matter how many times you practice the skill, it is impossible to raise the quality of the pill in the slightest. As a result, there is no reason for them to learn it. Unless, you don't think that you have any potential left in you, that's why you are giving up on yourself. Zhang Xian smiled and shot a meaningful glance at him. Apothecary by Ming, may I know if what I said is true? Humph. Upon hearing the words of the other party, Bai Ming gritted his teeth, embarrassed and angry. As the de facto head of the Bai clan, as well as a 1-star apothecary, he possessed exceptional standing in the capital. Yet, by the words of the other party, he became an apothecary with low standards, no more potential left. However, he was unable to refute his words. The flaw of the 1,000 mountain hands was exactly as the other party said. Even though he was able to produce the Acupoint soothing pill easily, it was difficult for him to further refine its quality. You don't need to feel gleeful over this. So what if you can point out these? You need to point out the errors in my movements previously before it can be considered your victory. Taking a deep breath, Bai Ming suppressed his anger. All right. Instead of arguing with him, Zhang Xian stepped forward and walked toward the cauldron. Then allow me to start from the very basics. As long as you are an apothecary, you know that you require incredible control over the flame and the cauldron to produce high-quality pills. Earlier, Apothecary by Ming started forging his pills right after picking up the medicine. How much do you know about this cauldron? What about the flames? You don't need to refute my words by saying that the specifications of these cauldrons are roughly the same. I can clearly tell you that even with the same medicinal herb, flames, and cauldron, the medicine you forge can be different. This is due to a minuscule difference or a tiny mistake made by the apothecary that the pills forged will be a quality lower than what it should be. His hand stroking the cauldron, Zhang Xian continued, if you don't believe me, I can show you now. This cauldron has a height of 7 qi and 3 cun and width of 3 cun and 2 qi. It was created by a 3mo craftsman in the Stone Well workshop 7 years and 3 months ago. A total of 147 pills have been forged using and of it, of which 88 were grade 1 pills and 59 were pills lower than grade 1. During the transportation of the cauldron, it suffered 3 impacts. There are a total of 13 slight scratches throughout the entire cauldron. It won't cause too much trouble when forging ordinary pills, but it will scatter the medicinal effects and spiritual energy within the pill. As such, due to the insufficient medicinal effects harnessed within the pill, the quality of the pill will drop. 1 qi-30. 3 centimeters, 1 cun-3. 3 centimeters, this cauldron is slightly thicker than a cun and it requires an incense's time and 34 breaths for the heat to completely permeate the cauldron. Also, the thickness of the cauldron walls on the left and right are slightly different, around 3 hair strands off. Don't underestimate the difference in this thickness. With the same flames, there will be a 5% difference in the temperature between both sides. The medicinal effects of scattered floral grass and lone-eyed dragon grass of the Acupoint soothing pill will be completely different when placed on either side. Are you for real? There is even such a thing for a cauldron? Upon listening to Zhang Xian's casual explanations, the jaws of the apothecaries fell to the floor and they felt like they were going insane. Even though they knew that a difference in the cauldron could result in the formation of different pills, never did they imagine that there was such wisdom behind a cauldron. Furthermore, this was a cauldron that the Apothecary Guild brought in specially for this pill debate. How did he know so much about it? To even know where it was made, how thick the walls were, its size and how many pills it had forged. The heck, you are about to bash through the heavens. To see all these with a single glance, are you, a monster? Alright, I will continue to talk about the flames then. Ignoring the astonished expression on everyone's faces, Zhang Xian pointed to the flames burning beneath the cauldron and continued, "This is where the heat of the heavenly coal originates from, as well as the hottest part. With the heat here, even metal could be easily melted. By propelling it with a fighter's jinqi, you can easily control the strength of the flames and thus the temperature of the cauldron. However, the flames do not come into direct contact with the medicinal herbs. They are placed in the cauldron, and in there, they form pills. How much heat from the flames permeates through the cauldron walls and how much of it is left in the cauldron is what we need to grasp clearly in our minds. Heavenly coal is a coal exceptionally suited for forging pills. Not only is it capable of reaching high temperatures, the permeability of its heat is also incredible. For normal coal, after permeating through a cun of cauldron walls or so, only 37% of the heat will be retained. On the other hand, the heavenly coal retains 46%. Only by knowing this much can you ascertain the temperature the medicinal herbs inside are under, how long it will take for the medicinal properties of the herbs to be best unleashed, and how you can forge the highest quality pill. Of course, these are only the bare basics that an apothecary needs to know, so they can't be considered as flaws. I am just casually introducing them. Zhang Xian smiled and glanced at Ming standing off to the side. However, I would like to ask Apothecary Ming, before forging the pills, did you notice these? Apothecary Ming felt his hair standing on end and he almost fainted on the spot. Notice? Notice your head. I am just forging a normal pill. Given how complicated these things are, how the heck would I know? Besides, even if I had been concerned with them, there was nothing I could do. You can't expect me to find a ruler and start measuring the entire cauldron before testing the temperature of the coal bit by bit. If I started doing so, it would be 2 days before I could start forging. He felt stifled within, but Ming also knew that he was unable to refute Zhang Xian's words. It was the basics to check the cauldron and flames of the cauldron before forging pills. Even apprentices were aware of it. His action of going straight to forging was clearly a huge mistake. Using the words in Zhang Xian's previous world, if a person didn't buckle their seatbelt, check the tires, and scan the surroundings before starting to drive, they couldn't refute anything if an accident occurred. Right now, that was the emotion Ming was experiencing. Lectured by an apprentice apothecary in public, yet unable to refute anything at all. It was clear just by thinking of how stifled he was at this moment. Alright, now that I have touched on the cauldron and the flames, I shall talk about the fusing of the medicinal herbs. Knowing that the other party would be unable to reply to his words, Zhang Xian could not be bothered to continue interrogating him over those mistakes of his. Instead, he walked over to the medicinal racks. Acupoint soothing pill requires a total of 47 types of herbs. Given the number of herbs that are involved in the forging process, there are herbs that complement one another, as well as herbs that clash with one another. As such, if you don't control the process properly, it is very easy for the medicinal herb to clash with one another and the pill will be ruined. Let me first talk about Apothecary Ming's forging sequence. The first herb he put in was heart grass. Heart grass has calming properties and is resilient to high temperature. As such, it requires strong flames to extract its essence. It is correct to place it into the cauldron first so that it can come into contact with the flames earlier to incite its medicinal properties. However, 7 breaths after placing heart grass in, he placed in the second herb, split palm flower. If I'm not wrong, that heart grass he took was only half a year old. As such, its medicinal properties are not strong enough and most of it was concentrated on the leaves instead of the meridians. For such a herb, the medicinal effects will be swiftly released upon meeting strong flames. Under normal situations, he should have placed split palm flower in after 4 breaths. Yet, he delayed it 3 entire breaths, causing a loss in the medicinal effect by 13%. Fail. On the other hand, split palm flower has a maturity of 5 years and the medicinal effects of it is relatively stronger. He should have slowly released the split palm flowers by the left wall of the cauldron, and the duration of its descent should be roughly half a breath. During this time, the heart of the cauldron would unleash the medicinal effects of it, allowing it to better mix with heart grass. However, Apothecary by Ming threw the medicinal herb straight at it, depriving it of the opportunity to be heated by the cauldron in advance. As such, its medicinal effect wasn't fully unleashed and 14% of the medicinal effect was lost. Fail. The medicinal effects of these two herbs clash with one another, so he should have quickly placed in scattered floral grass, which has a pacifying effect for the two. Yet he threw in the violent lone-eyed dragon grass, worsening the clash between the two herbs. As such, 11% of the medicinal effect was lost. Fail. The lone-eyed dragon grass is a herb with yang properties. After placing it into the scorching cauldron, he should have added cooling grass to counteract its effects. Yet Apothecary by Ming added wisdom mother grass instead. Wisdom mother grass is able to neutralize all medicinal herbs, and as such, it is the best choice to serve as a medium between herbs. However, it is precisely because of that it completely neutralized the yang properties of the lone-eyed dragon grass, greatly reducing the medicinal effect of the Acupoint smoothing pill. Fail. 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 Zhang Xian spoke faster and faster, akin to a machine gun. His every word was logical with evidence to back them up. Every single failure struck like a hammer on Apothecary by Ming's face. His face grew paler and paler and his body trembled uncontrollably. Pill forging was by no means simple. Even with the same herbs, if the maturity was different, it could have different medicinal properties. Not to mention, an apothecary needed to pair them together in a way that complemented them to mix them together and such. Even for a single Acupoint soothing pill, 3 days wouldn't be enough if Zhang Xian were to go in depth. This was also the reason why apothecaries were one of the front-runners in the upper 9 paths. Everything he said is true. To recall the sequence in which Apothecary by Ming added the 47 medicinal herbs with a single look. What kind of memorization ability does he possess? The most shocking thing isn't him remembering the sequence in which the medicinal herbs were placed in. It is that he was able to tell the maturity of every single medicinal herb and come up with a method to complement them so as to best unleash its medicinal effects. Is he really human? Now that I've heard his words, an apothecary really has to take a lot of factors into account. It is no wonder that my pills are unable to reach perfection or inscribed pill. So this is the reason. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's words, everyone became mute. It was as though their heads had been smashed with a bat, their mouths agape and their eyes wide. The heck? This is what you call pill forging? What we were doing before was simply wasting herbs and insulting this occupation. Most probably, if they were to use the method he spoke of to forge this pill, the pill would be able to reach higher heights. Perfection and even inscribed pill wouldn't be problems. This was no longer a theory that a 1-star apothecary could come into contact with. Only the more advanced apothecaries would pay attention to such minute details. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this moment, the thought of suicide even ran through Apothecary by Ming's head. Listening to the words of the other party, his entire pill forging sequence was a failure. How could this be considered pill forging? He must be forging feces instead. Furthermore, at least when one forges feces, they don't waste any materials. Yet, when he forged a pill, he wasted all of the medicinal herbs used in it. Pooh! The stifling sensation in his chest grew heavier and heavier, and he puked a mouthful of blood. All along, he thought of himself as talented in pill forging, and that he was truly a highly skilled apothecary. Yet, upon hearing the words of the other party, he realized that his standards couldn't even match up to that of a child's. All of the confidence he held in the past was completely shattered. The current him feared to even approach a cauldron now. His body trembled violently. Just a moment ago, he stood up proudly and determinedly to punish Zhang Xian for his humiliation. Yet, at this moment, his complexion was turning more and more awful, as though he were going berserk. A moment later, He gritted his teeth. That's right. Given my standards, what kind of pills can I possibly forge? All I'm doing is wasting medicinal herbs. From today onward, I, by Ming, will not forge a single pill anymore. If I break this vow, let the heavens tear me apart. A vow resounded in the hall. What? He vowed not to forge a single pill anymore. Apothecary by Ming. Upon hearing the vow he made, everyone was flabbergasted. They couldn't help but shudder, upset at the thought of the loss of a comrade. For an apothecary to vow to never forge a single pill anymore was equivalent to bidding the world of pill forging farewell. The effort he had put in for his entire life had all gone to waste. And the reason for that was a mere apprentice apothecary pointing out the flaws in his pill forging process. Isn't he being too rash? An apothecary couldn't help but comment. If you were criticized like that, what would you do? Another apothecary responded. I. The former paused halfway through, unable to find a word to say. What the other party said was true. If you were in the place of Apothecary by Ming, upon realizing that his forging technique was nothing but flaws and the hard work he had devoted into it was nothing but rubbish, the confidence he had held for countless years would probably collapse in an instant. The moment he lost all his confidence, the trauma he received from it would cause him to be unable to forge a single pill for the rest of his life. Rather than suffer in anguish over it, he might as well simply make a vow to never forge a single pill anymore. Pill forging wasn't a joke. Mental state, skill, confidence, all of these factors were absolutely required. Without confidence, how could one be called an apothecary? To make an experienced apothecary lose all of his confidence and fear forging just by pointing out his mistakes. Such a thought flashed across their minds in an instant. Taking another glance at Zhang Xian, their hearts skipped a beat. It was no wonder that he was reluctant to speak of their flaws in pill forging. It was not that he was unable to discern anything from it and resorted to other methods to make up for his weakness. Only now did they know, the other party wasn't in the least as ignorant as they thought. Rather, it was because he knew too much that he feared he would shatter the last bit of confidence they had. Brother, we would like to ask you, are you the apprentice apothecary or are we? I admit defeat. After declaring that he would no longer forge pills, Apothecary by Ming bowed deeply to Zhang Xian. It had been slightly more than 2 hours since the beginning of the pill debate and there were already 4 apothecaries who had admitted defeat. This conclusion was unexpected for all involved. Even Ouyang Cheng shuddered in disbelief. Previously, he didn't hold high hopes for Zhang Xian's victory. He didn't expect it to end up like this. It was completely one-sided. It was no wonder that he was able to achieve a perfect score on the apprentice apothecary examination, even recognizing medicinal herbs that the examiners got wrong. His abilities were simply way too impressive. On the other hand, Wen Shui's eyes were full of fear and her body trembled non-stop. To think that she had mocked a person who could leave these apothecaries speechless. Was there something wrong with her head or was she simply too gutsy? It was fortunate that the other party had no intentions of fussing over the matter with her. Otherwise, she could have even been expelled from the Apothecary Guild. I'll go. Upon seeing Bai Ming admit defeat and the silence that lingered around them, Du Man stepped forward. Please go easy on me. Forcing a smile onto his face, Du Man walked over to the cauldron. The pill he forged was grade 1-2. It was slightly inferior to the Acupoint soothing pill and Tranquil heart pill from before. His movements were fluid and swift. Soon, he managed to successfully forge the pills, all of which were at the level of satiation. The other party's attitude was amiable. Besides, they also became acquainted yesterday. As a result, Zhang Xian didn't say too much and simply pointed out a few of the more obvious mistakes. The latter admitted defeat straight afterward. At this moment, out of the 10 apothecaries, 5 had already admitted defeat. The pill debate was halfway through. Let's continue. Who will be the next? With his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian scanned the crowd calmly. Silence continued to linger around them. In the pill debate of other apprentice apothecaries, the examinee would always look at the examiner in fear, afraid that the other party would intentionally come up with difficult questions. Yet this fellow was the exact opposite. All of the remaining apothecaries cowered back, afraid of their names being called. If not witnessed it firsthand, no one would believe it possible. I'll go. After another moment of silence, an elder stood up. Apothecary Lin Mu. Apothecary Cheng Jiang had once used the excuse of wanting to view his skills to secretly learn his personal forging technique, frost-threaded hands. Apothecary Lin, please wait a second. This time, I would like to test him along with you. Right after Lin Mu stood up, a middle-aged man stood up as well. Apothecary Jean Chen. Together. Lin Mu frowned. How can two people forge pills simultaneously for the other party to point out their flaws? The fact that he can see through our flaws means that his ability to discern is impressive and he has undergone good education. It's very likely that he is under the guidance of a master teacher. However, I don't believe that the knowledge he has stored in his head can be as impressive as his discernment ability, especially given his age. So, let's not forge pills and instead bring up questions. Let's not be fooled by him. Apothecary Jean Chen harumphed. This. Lin Mu was stunned. That's right, why didn't I think of this? He isn't even 20 yet. Even if he could read right after he was born, how many books could possibly be read? How much of the content of each book could he possibly recall? A true pill debate involves raising questions about pill forging for the examinee to answer. He must have known that he didn't have enough knowledge, so he intentionally heightened the difficulty to perceiving flaws in forging techniques instead. It is true that the difficulty has been raised, but if he had the guidance of a master teacher and came into contact with good education from a young age, it wouldn't be difficult for him to see through our mistakes. That's right, master teachers are extremely knowledgeable while on the other hand we are only one-star apothecaries. His discernment abilities can't possibly be weak being the disciple of such a figure. If so, it's understandable that he sees through our mistakes. Apothecary Jean Chen's words relit the flames in the four remaining apothecaries and they regained their confidence. The fact that the other party was able to see through their mistakes by viewing their pill forging could only mean that his discernment ability was outstanding. It didn't mean that he had to be knowledgeable. Since that was the case, questioning him might just turn out to be his weakness. All along, everyone had been fooled by this fellow. That's right. Lin Mu came to realization and nodded his head fervently. It was no wonder that everyone agreed with Jean Chen's view. After all, accumulation of knowledge required time and effort. This Zhang Xian, even with an optimistic estimate, couldn't possibly be 20 yet. Even if he read every day, how many books could he have possibly read? Furthermore, he still had to remember their contents. You want to ask me questions instead? Not expecting these people to come up with such a conclusion after a long moment of contemplation, Zhang Xian simply smiled faintly in response. All right then, let's begin. After reading through the books in the basic tier book collection vault and the teacher's compendium pavilion, the knowledge in his head right now was significantly greater than that of these apothecaries. Even if they wanted to test his knowledge, he didn't have anything to fear. I'll see whether you can retain your confidence when I stump you later on. Upon seeing that the other party held no fear whatsoever, a cold gleam flashed across Apothecary Jean Chen's eyes. According to the rules of a normal pill debate, I can raise 3 questions. If you are able to answer all of them, I will have to admit defeat. On the other hand, if you fail to answer any one of the 3, you will have failed. All that you have accomplished beforehand would go to waste. There was a complete list of rules and regulations for pill debate. The 10 apothecaries weren't allowed to bring up as many questions as they pleased. Otherwise, wouldn't the examinee tire himself to death when undergoing pill debate? The examiners could only pose 3 questions each, and if the other party's answers were correct, they had to admit defeat. However, if he couldn't answer any one of the questions or he answered erroneously, it would be a straight failure, regardless of how many questions he had answered before that. Sure. Zhang Xian was also well aware of the rules. He nodded his head. All right then, here is my first question. When forging a grade 1 body tempering pill, even when the pill comes out from the same cauldron and was at the same level of quality, it is possible for one pill to have outstanding effects while another has minuscule effects. What are the reasons behind this? Apothecary Jiang asked. Upon hearing this question, the other apothecary's attention was piqued. Body tempering pill was a pill often consumed by fighter for Dan. It could temper a person's physical body, allowing one to improve swiftly in the Pixue realm. This was also the reason why they often forged such a pill. However, just like what Apothecary Jiang said, there would often be situations in which the medicinal effects in each pill were different despite coming from the same cauldron. Consuming the pills that came from the same cauldron, some experienced tremendous effects and advance far in the Pixue realm while others found it completely ineffective for them. Apothecary Jiang sure picked a difficult question. Zhang Xian shook his head. There is no clear answer to this question in the entire Tianxian kingdom. Yet you posed this question to me. How do you expect me to answer it? However, other people may be unable to say anything about this subject, but I have my own ways. Smiling lightly, Zhang Xian said, as for the matter you said, an apothecary named Cheng had already proposed it 37 years ago. Back then, he gathered 23 apothecaries and researched the matter for 3 days straight. He wrote the conclusion to their discussions in a book titled Cheng Ye's Body Tempering Theories. If you have read it, you should know what his conclusion is. He thinks that the reason for this difference has something to do with the constitution of a cultivator. Some people are born with a body compatible with body tempering pill while others' physique may be resistant to it. It's just like how some people have a high tolerance for alcohol while others don't. Back then, this theory received the approval of many people. However, 18 years ago, 3-star apothecary Zhang Jian noticed something that disputed this theory. If it was due to the constitution of an individual, then why was the second consumed pill effective for some individuals when the first one wasn't? Clearly, the theory about the difference being attributed to the constitution does not hold. Thus, Apothecary Zhang Jian investigated the matter and wrote the conclusion of his research into Discussions of Tempering Pill. This book clearly details his opinions and he disagrees with the notion that the difference in effects of the body tempering pill is due to one's constitution. Rather, it was because the medicinal effects of the herbs weren't distributed fairly among the different pills during the forging process. As such, even in the same cauldron and among pills of the same quality, there could be different medicinal effects. This theory was accepted for a few years until 12 years ago, when someone cast doubts and overthrew it. The one who doubted the theory wasn't an apothecary but a 1-star master teacher. He questioned, if the medicinal effects weren't distributed fairly among the different pill, then why did such a phenomenon only occur to body tempering pills and not other pills? Therefore, he proposed a bold suggestion. It was recorded in Ning Han's verbal records. This book wasn't widely sold and there is only a single copy of it in the guild's basic tier book collection vault. If you all haven't read it, it is in the 19th bookshelf, at the extreme right corner. Zhang Xian chuckled and continued, this master teacher named Ning Han came up with a bold proposal. He thinks that the reason there was such an occurrence among body tempering pills was because of the difference between the maturity of the herbs and the forging technique of the apothecaries. Of course, he only brought it up as a theory and didn't experiment. 8 years ago, apothecary Zhao Yu from Hongxian Kingdom received an epiphany from this book and conducted an experiment. He changed 18 of the main medicinal herbs used in the pill and tried forging it using 42 different kinds of forging techniques. He wrote his conclusion in a book titled Detailed Explanation of Body Tempering. It just so happens that there is one of them in our basic tier book collection vault. It is on the 27th row, on the upper left corner, beside Yangzhen's pill forging guide and the method to forging jade blood pill. If all of you doubt my words, you can find someone to fetch it here. I believe that the answer in the book is the most accurate one, and it should be able to answer your question. At this point, Zhang Xian stopped and gestured for Ouyang Cheng to dispatch someone to fetch the book. There's no need. Upon hearing Zhang Xian's explanation, the complexion of Apothecary Jiang Chen, who was still gleeful a moment ago, darkened to the color of the bottom of a wok and he stumbled 2 steps backward. In an instant, he seemed to have aged many years. What? If we don't fetch the book here, I fear that Apothecary Jiang will not accept my answer. Zhang Xian said. Your answer is correct. I have read the book and it is identical to what you said. Apothecary Jiang Chen nodded his head. Correct? Identical? That shouldn't be possible. Apothecary Jiang Chen simply raised a casual question and he was able to answer it so simply. Furthermore, out of the countless books in the vault, he was able to remember its exact position. How is that possible? Is he still human? You must be pulling my leg. Upon hearing his acknowledgement, the room broke into a commotion once more. Previously, they thought that due to the limitations of his age, Zhang Xian wouldn't have the time to read many books. After this round, they realized that compared to him, they were the ones who hadn't read many books. Not only was the other party able to accurately remember the contents, time the book was written, and title of the book, he was even able to point out its exact location in the vault. For them, it would already be wonderful if they could remember the contents detailed within. Looked like there really was a huge difference between humans. Since Apothecary Jiang Chen has acknowledged my answer to be correct, let's proceed on to the second question. Zhang Xian chuckled. You want to compete with me in memorization ability? What a joke. I have the Library of Heaven's Path in my mind. With a jolt of my consciousness, the book comes flying to me. I only have to read according to it. Regardless of how good your memory is, you can't possibly be more accurate than me. The second question. When forging a grade 1 strength enhancement pill, why do cracks appear on a cauldron, making it difficult to continue with the forging? Apothecary Jiang Chen pondered for an entire 10 minutes before asking. Incredible. He chose an excellent question. Indeed, the cauldron often cracks while forging a grade 1 strength enhancement pill. On the surface, it seems like an apothecary's question, but to answer the question, you require knowledge of smithing as well. Indeed, let's see how he will answer the question. Upon hearing Apothecary Jiang Chen's second question, everyone's attention was piqued again. An apothecary's cauldron was forged by blacksmiths, and the matter of it breaking during pill forging wasn't strictly within the boundaries of pill forging anymore. However, if one scrutinized the question carefully, it was still related to pill forging. It was precisely because it lay at the boundaries of the two that many apothecaries did not bother to learn about it, let alone answering such a question. Since everyone could tell what he was trying to do, how could Zhang Xian remain oblivious? The corners of his lips curled upward and he replied, as for this problem, Apothecary Wu Zhao's cauldron maintenance, Apothecary Zhao Qian's important matters to note for pill forging, Apothecary Niu Xian's miscellaneous things you have to know, Apothecary Pang Bo's protect your new cauldron. Without pausing, Zhang Xian listed the titles of dozens of books before concluding. The answers are detailed in these books. Actually, it wasn't really a difficult question. The cauldrons that you all use are made of ordinary 9 refinement metal. This metal may be strong, but it is unable to withstand the clash between extreme cold and heat. The main ingredient required for strength enhancement pill is the blood of a cold attribute savage beast. When something that cold comes into contact with the hot cauldron, it's natural that the cauldron's unable to withstand it. If you wish to resolve the problem, it is best to use heavy iron cauldron instead. Or you can also change your cauldron every time after you forge strength enhancement pills. Zhang Xian smiled. This question might seem difficult, but it was recorded in the books of the basic tier book collection vault as well. It was just that the number of books in the vault was too vast, and the apprentices in the guild would often choose to research pill forging techniques so that they could become an official apothecary faster. As a result, there was no reason for them to look into these kinds of miscellaneous books. Furthermore, after becoming an official apothecary, one's standing would become completely different. With more guests paying them a visit and with more authority, they would have less time to read books. There were many things that they could learn from the book collection vault, but they never found the time to look for it, and as such they were ignorant of them. This was precisely the reason why the other apothecaries were unable to answer such questions. On the other hand, for Zhang Xian, who had duplicated a basic tier book collection vault in his mind, he had no difficulty answering this question at all. I wonder if Apothecary Jiang Chen is satisfied with my answer. If not, I can still go on. There's no need, your answer is correct. Cold sweat appeared on Apothecary Jiang Chen's forehead. When he started to forge strength enhancement pills, he met with such a problem. So he went around asking others to seek an answer. Eventually, he found his answer in a book, and that book was one of the dozen books which Zhang Xian had just listed, Protect Your New Cauldron by Apothecary Pang Bo. He thought that this was the only book which had detailed information on this subject, so he raised this question to trouble the other party. Yet this fellow was able to list more than a dozen books in a breath. It was fortunate that he didn't name the book earlier. Otherwise, he would be humiliated when the other party listed this huge collection of books. The heck, what is the head of this fellow made of? How could he remember everything so clearly? Upon seeing this situation, Ouyang Cheng and Du Man exchanged glances and smiled wryly. This was nothing. If you all knew that this fellow could even point out the specific page in the book, you probably wouldn't have insisted on conducting your tests like that. In fact, the other party proposing to point out flaws in their forging technique was indeed raising the difficulty for him. If you wish to triumph against him in a competition of knowledge, we're afraid that you could only do it in your dreams. Chapter 120, Not a Thing. Since I've answered the second question already, name your third one. Seeing the other party conceding the second question, Zhang Xian couldn't be bothered to continue lingering about the matter. I admit defeat. These are already the two most difficult questions I can think of. I will just be making a mockery of myself if I continue asking. Apothecary Jiang Chen shook his head. The other party's action of listing out the names of so many books felled his confidence. He knew that if he continued like this, the only one being embarrassed would be him. He might as well surrender at this point. At least he could retain some dignity. You aren't going to ask the third question? Zhang Xian was taken aback for a moment before coming to a realization. Since he was able to easily answer the most difficult questions he could come up with, he would most likely be humiliating himself if he continued. Zhang Xian was impressed with Apothecary Jiang Chen's decisiveness. It's your turn. He turned around to look at Lin Mu. Upon seeing Zhang Xian's attention turned onto him, Apothecary Lin Mu gritted his teeth and asked, I have a question which, honestly speaking, I don't have an answer to either. If you can't answer it, it won't be considered your defeat. However, if you can answer it, I will admit defeat right away. It will be pointless even if I ask any further than that anyway. In the pill debate, the examiner had to know the answers to the questions they were posing. Otherwise, when you don't even know the answer yourself, how can you determine whether the other party's answer is correct? Now that Apothecary Lin Mu had confessed that he wasn't able to answer this question either, logically speaking, it was already beyond the boundaries of the pill debate. Zhang Xian could reject to answer his question. It wouldn't be considered his defeat if he chose to do so. Speak. Zhang Xian casually said. Reject? Are you kidding? Since I can answer two fewer questions, it is obvious that I should answer his question. I have been researching Meridian Expansion Pill for a very long, and regardless of the forging method, the medicinal herbs, or the cauldron, I double-check them to make sure there is nothing wrong with them. But for some reason, I am unable to form the pill. I would like you to tell me the reason for my failure. Apothecary Lin Mu asked, after hesitating for a moment, what kind of question is this? Aren't you being a little too difficult here? That's right, you should find the reason behind why you're unable to successfully forge a pill yourself. How do you expect him to answer that question out of the blue? Upon hearing Lin Mu's words, everyone was dumbfounded for a moment before peculiar expressions crept onto their faces. When posing a question during a pill debate, one had to ask something that the other party could answer. Asking the other party how many moles you had on your body, how many meals you had yesterday, how many women you had relationships with. Even gods would be unable to answer these questions. Right now, Lin Mu's question was similar to those. You simply said that you were unable to forge the meridian expansion pill. How do you expect the other party to answer your query? Cough cough, Apothecary Lin Mu, you have to ask a question with basis behind it. This question isn't suitable, you should switch to another one. Cheng, who was conducting the pill debate, couldn't stand looking at the situation any longer and spoke up. I was being too rash. Upon hearing the words of the others, Lin Mu realized that his question was inappropriate. Thus, he shook his head, and just as he was about to say something else, Zhang Xian beat him to it. You weren't really rash. How about this, you try to forge a meridian expansion pill for me first. I can't do anything about it through just your descriptions alone. Alright. Lin Mu didn't expect the other party to agree. Nodding his head, he walked over to the cauldron. Actually, he didn't intend to ask this question initially, it simply popped into his mind all of a sudden. Recently, he had been thinking of forging meridian expansion pills, but for some reason, he was unable to succeed. He had researched many different books, tried many different forging techniques, and everything he could think of, but his forging still ended in failure. Upon seeing Zhang Xian pointing out the mistakes of the others so easily, he couldn't help asking him. As long as he was able to find the mistake behind it, he was confident that with his skills he could successfully forge it. Thinking that it was impertinent to ask this of him on such an occasion, he thought that the Zhang Xian would reject his question. He didn't expect him to actually accept his question. Fwoosh boosh. The flames burned furiously and all kinds of medicinal herbs flew inside. Lin Mu's 10 fingers looked like they were playing the zither, continuously dancing all about. Peering from afar, it seemed as though he were playing a heavenly tune instead of pill forging. With a single look, Zhang Xian could tell that the apothecary before him had immersed himself in the art of pill forging for countless years and was already well versed in it. With such skills and a completely flawless forging sequence, he was still unable to successfully form the pills. This perplexed him. There is no errors at all. With such skills, he could successfully forge a strength enhancement pill. Why would he be unable to form the meridian expansion pill? Indeed, that's strange. Everyone's attention gathered on Apothecary Lin Mu as he started his forging. The more they watched, the more puzzled they became. It was exactly as he said. Regardless of whether it was the medicinal herb, his movements, or any other significant factors, there wasn't a single error at all. Reasonably speaking, he should at least be able to form the pills. In fact, the pill would likely reach satiation. To be unable to form the pills, that was impossible. Unfortunately, reality glared straight back at them. Soon, the flames died down, and upon lifting the lid of the cauldron, a black sludge of medicinal waste presented itself before the people. Fail. This doesn't make sense. Cheng's wrinkled his brow to the point it folded into creases. As the guild leader of the Apothecary Guild and a 1-star intermediate stage apothecary, the highest of the group here, his discernment ability was also outstanding. After looking at the entire process, his conclusion was the same as the others, that pills would be formed. Yet the results were contrary to his expectations. A puzzled expression hung on his face and he contemplated the matter seriously. Sigh. Upon seeing the pitch-black medicinal waste in the cauldron, Apothecary Lin Mu sighed and shook his head. He lifted his head to look at the young man. This is the question I would like to ask you. If you can answer it, I will admit defeat straight away. However, if you can't answer, I will switch to a different question. It won't affect the results of the pill debate. Can't answer? Zhang Xian laughed. Stepping over to the cauldron, he circled around it and examined the medicinal waste. After that, he lifted his head to look at Apothecary Lin Mu with a bizarre expression on his face. Apothecary Lin Mu sure is vigorous despite your age. I never thought it possible. Vigorous despite my age? Lin Mu was taken aback. What does me being vigorous have to do with whether I am able to successfully forge the pill or not? Is there even a relationship between the two? The other apothecaries also looked over with doubtful expressions. Previously, they would have publicly criticized him and doubted his words. However, after witnessing his vast knowledge and his ability, they understood that he had good reason for saying such words. Indeed. Upon walking over, I noticed a fragrance unique to women on Apothecary Lin's body. Furthermore, the scent is refreshing, pure and full of life. If I'm not wrong, she should not yet be 18 years old. Zhang Xian said. Indeed, I just brought a concubine into my household. She hasn't reached 18 yet. Apothecary Lin Mu's face flushed red. He was already nearing 70. He had a foot in the grave, but he had brought a 17-year-old concubine back home. Even though it didn't mean anything much in this world, he was still embarrassed to have the fact pointed out in front of so many other apothecaries. Could it be that, the reason why I am unable to forge the Meridian Expansion Pill is because of my concubine? Soon, Lin Mu arrived at a conclusion. Puzzled, he stared at Zhang Xian. If there was no relationship between the two, given Zhang Xian's previous actions, he probably wouldn't point it out. Just that, how was accepting a concubine related to forging pills? They were two completely different things. You're right. If I'm not wrong, that concubine of yours isn't a thing. Zhang Xian pondered for a moment before replying calmly. Not a thing. Lin Mu was flabbergasted for a moment before frowning. Infuriated, displeasure showed on his face. Why did you start insulting her? Chapter 121, Vying to go first. I asked you to look for the flaws in my method in forging the Meridian Expansion Pill, yet you insulted my concubine, saying that she wasn't a person. What do you mean by that? Even though Lin Mu was good-natured, he was still displeased by those words. Not only did his face darken, the others also had bizarre expressions on theirs. What was going on? Why did he suddenly start insulting others? Apothecary Lin, please calm down. Zhang Xian seemed to have guessed that the other party would react like that, and he looked at him playfully. Have you been working hard every day, not resting even during daytime? Upon being posed with such a question, Lin Mu's face reddened and he was a little embarrassed. I just married my concubine, so I might have, worked a little hard. An old man like him married a young wife, not to mention a beautiful lady who wasn't 18 yet, so it was no wonder that Lin Mu would shower plenty of love on her. If he could, he would be in bed all day long. Ha! Apothecary Lin, I didn't expect that you would still be so active. You are truly vigorous, truly an old man with the zeal of a youngster. Impressive, I am truly impressed. Upon hearing the conversation of the duo, the other apothecaries couldn't help chuckling. It was common for men to bring in concubines into the household, but for him to bring in a concubine who hadn't reached 18 yet and work hard every day, both day and night. This apothecary Lin Mu had way too much drive. Upon hearing the laughter of his old buddies, Lin Mu felt embarrassed. Looking at Zhang Xian, he said, there should be nothing wrong with that. It was perfectly normal for males and females to be in love with one another. It was a natural phenomenon of complementing the yang with yin. Furthermore, his cultivation had reached Pixue realm, so it wasn't a big deal for him to go at it several times in a single day. In fact, it wasn't a big deal for ordinary humans to go at it several times every day either. If that was all, there would be nothing wrong with the situation. However, In order to become more fiery, did you consume some medicine that you shouldn't have? Zhang Xian asked. This. Getting. Lin Mu's heart skipped a beat. The other party was correct. Even though he possessed a high cultivation realm, he was still advanced in age, so his physiological functions weren't working as well as they had before. In order to take better care of his concubine, he consumed some medicine to boost his stamina and strength recently. If I'm not wrong, your concubine persuaded you to consume that medicine, right? Zhang Xian continued. You're right. Lin Mu nodded his head. As an apothecary, he knew that all medicine was poisonous in a way or another, so he was reluctant to eat it. However, he was unable to stand his ground against the persuasion of his concubine. As such, he could only consume it. The medicine was provided by the other party, and after which he felt like a wolf, full of incomparable vitality. Furthermore, it left him excited for quite a period of time. Despite your correct forging method, sequence, and such, you are still unable to forge the Meridian Expansion Pill. With both of his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian circled around Apothecary Lin Mu. Choosing not to pursue the matter about his concubine, he continued to talk about pill forging. Initially, I was unable to find the reason, and that left me puzzled for a moment. I even wondered if it could be a mistake with the cauldron when I suddenly recalled a certain line in a book. The book is known as Discussion on Pill Formation. It was written by a 3-star apothecary, Senior Mu Yang. The book is in the basic tier book collection vault, and written within are several hundred reasons why a pill might fail to form. Of which, there was a certain line, and quoting directly from it, upon losing one's breath, one's spirit would be incomplete. Even with perfect skills, it would be hard for the pill to form. The meaning is simple. It means that if one's essence is lacking, even if the forging technique and sequences are completely correct, it will be difficult for the pill to be successfully formed. This formation of pill here refers to Meridian Expansion Pill. Upon thinking of these, I walked over to you and caught the scent of the fragrance of the body of a young lady in rouge. As a result, I asked you about your concubine. Actually, just by marrying a concubine and working day and night, you shouldn't have lost your essence to the point that the pill wouldn't form. The main problem here was that, you have lost your core. Lost my core? Lin Mu was taken aback. That's right, humans have a core, and losing it results in catastrophic effects. Given that you are an apothecary, you should have heard of it. If you have just worked day and night, given your strength as a fighter 6 Dan Pixue realm, it wouldn't be anything much. You should recover fully by resting for half a day. However, you shouldn't have eaten the tonic she gave you. Those tonics were actually poison that stimulate your spirit, making you imagine hallucinations. It is true that it grants you overwhelming vitality and battle power in the short run, but the poison also flows about your entire body and damages your core. As time goes by, your body will gradually grow weaker and weaker. In the end, you will die. On the outside, it looks no different to the usual aging process, and even more accomplished apothecaries would find it hard to tell the difference. If I'm not wrong, if you were to continue consuming the pill like that, you would age swiftly and, within a single year, you will definitely die. Even deities would find it hard to save you then. Meridian Expansion Pill is a medicine that can widen a cultivator's meridians and can be considered to be a tonic. Losing your core, you are unable to focus your spirit, breath, and psyche, and as such, it is difficult for you to forge such a pill. Failing to forge the pill was very normal. At this point, Zhang Xian paused for a moment. For this kind of medicine to even fool an apothecary like you, it must be incomparably precious. It would be hard to imagine that your concubine is unaware of the matter. That is why I said that she is not a thing. If I have offended you, I hope that you can forgive me. This. Lin Mu shuddered and he staggered backward. The words of the other party were completely rational, such that it felt like he had witnessed it all happening. It was true that he felt his battle power rising upon consuming the medicine by his concubine. In the past, he would feel his back aching right after a single go. Yet, after taking the medicine, 3 to 5 times was an easy feat for him. Initially, he thought that he was slowly growing stronger. Never would he have thought that he was being drugged. Damn it. Damn it. That bitch, to think that I showered her with so much love. She actually tried to backstab me. Clenching his fist tightly, Lin Mu's eyes turned red. Alright, if Apothecary Lin thinks what I said is not true, there should be a way to verify what I just said. I have finished answering this question. Zhang Xian gestured. What you said is completely true, I thank you for your guidance. I admit defeat for this pill debate. Without any hesitation, Apothecary Lin Mu admitted defeat. The other party's words were spot on and his analysis completely rational. Given how he was unable to find a single mistake in what he said, he had no choice but to admit defeat. Furthermore, it was true that his body condition had slowly been deteriorating recently. Initially, he thought that it was due to his age. To think that his concubine was the cause of it. Zhang Xian simply smiled faintly, choosing not to interfere in Lin Mu's affairs. It was the other party's problem. He found it bothersome to get involved. Afterwards, he glanced at the 3 remaining apothecaries. You're the only ones left. Just ask any problems that you have altogether. Of the 10 apothecaries at the start, 7 had already admitted defeat. As long as these 3 did so as well, he would pass the pill debate and become an official apothecary. Genius brother Zhang Xian, if that's the case, I happen to have a question that I need to inquire of you. An apothecary stood up. Brother Lu, don't be too anxious. Going by seniority, I should be the one to go first. I happen to have thought of a question as well. Another apothecary stood up. Both of you, stop arguing. I should be the one to ask first. No matter what, I became an apothecary earlier than you two. The last elder also hurriedly stood up. Just a moment ago, they were still cowering in his presence. He had asked them to pose their questions many times previously just to receive a silent response. Yet now they were all vying to ask him questions. Zhang Xian was bewildered. Did they take the wrong medicine today? Chapter 122, Pill Debate ends. Not just Zhang Xian, even Ouyang Cheng and the others were dumbfounded by their actions. The hell, can anyone tell me what is going on? Weren't they still behaving apprehensively a moment ago? Why are they vying to go first, as though seeing a beautiful lady and charging towards her? You all. Wen Shui was also completely baffled. I get it, this bunch of fellows, they really. Du Man shook his head with a wry smile on his face. Get what? Ouyang Cheng looked over. Previously, Zhang Xian was able to point out their flaws through pill forging. It gave a feeling akin to being stripped naked in public. Under such circumstances, no one would be willing to pose questions. Apothecary Du Man said. But now, not only did he solve Apothecary Lin Mu's problem, he even pointed out a hidden threat for him. It is clear that this is an opportunity for them. Given that, who wouldn't get excited? That's true. Comprehending the situation now, Ouyang Cheng nodded his head. It is easier to know someone else than to know yourself. It was difficult to notice one's own flaws. With a single word from Zhang Xian, they might be able to correct their flaws and induce a giant improvement in their pill forging skills. It's a pity. I was truly foolish then. I shouldn't have admitted defeat so early on. Otherwise, I could have brought up some doubts I have been harboring inside me for a long time. With a pained heart, Apothecary Du Man shook his head. How did he miss such a good opportunity just like that? Just let it go since you've already passed it by. You're at fault for not treasuring the opportunity anyway. On the other hand, I have been dedicated to my responsibilities, making my best to ensure this pill debate is impartial. As such, I didn't even get a chance to pose a question. Say, When this pill debate ends, will he give me a chance to ask a question or two? I also have quite a few questions. At this point, Cheng's eyes shone brightly and excitement filled him. Apothecary Du Man had no words. Wen Shui didn't know what to say either. The hell? You are a one-star intermediate stage apothecary, as well as the head of the Apothecary Guild. For you to brazenly say that you want to consult an apprentice. Dedicated to your responsibilities, you say? Why do I not see a single hint of what you just said? You've just been sitting idly by. Alright, one at a time. Soon, Zhang Xian understood what was going. Shaking his head helplessly, he casually pointed to an apothecary among them. You? Me? Great. Upon being chosen, he hurriedly stood up. I have a question that I would really like to ask. Recently, I've had insomnia and wake up 7 or 8 times every night. I also often get nightmares. Can you help me check if I have any illness, or if someone is scheming against me, or if there is a problem with my concubine? Zhang Xian was speechless. So were the others. Cough cough. Apothecary Lu, we are in a pill debate, not a fortune-telling or patient treatment session. Pay attention to what you are saying. Cheng couldn't help but intervene. Ah. But, that's my question. This is what I want to ask. Apothecary Lu said with a resolute expression. Alright. How about this, you try forging a pill and I will try to see what I can through that. Zhang Xian felt a splitting headache consuming him as he waved him away. Alright. Apothecary Lu nodded his head in excitement before rushing over to start forging. How about you? What problems do you have? After settling the first fellow, Zhang Xian's attention turned to another apothecary. My question is actually quite simple. It isn't as shameless as Apothecary Lu's. The apothecary spoke with a righteous tone. My daughter is getting married within these 2 days, and the one she is marrying is a man called Zhou Xian. He hails from foreign lands, and even though I have investigated his background for quite a while, I have not been able to get any useful information on him. Can you help me check if that lad is reliable or not? If he isn't, I will reject this marriage. At this point, he hesitated for a moment as he looked at Zhang Xian questioningly. So, do I have to forge pills as well? Pooh! Zhang Xian almost threw up blood. Forge pills? Forge your head. What does your daughter getting married have to do with me or forging pills? I am just a person who is undergoing pill debate to become an apothecary. I am not here to divine your fate. Besides, even if I can divine fate, if you don't tell me the situation with your daughter, what can you forging pills do? Are you sure you aren't pulling my leg? Apothecary Qin, what the heck does your daughter getting married have to do with pill forging? Why are you asking Brother Zhang for that? What a joke. The final apothecary flung his hands and harumphed. But, this is the question I want to ask right now. Apothecary Qin was conflicted. You should at least ask something related to pill forging. You continue to think on that matter, I will go first. The last apothecary stepped forward toward Zhang Xian before saying, Brother Zhang Xian, seeing how young you are, you probably aren't married yet. I have a beautiful daughter who can serve as your concubine. Look, if not, my niece is also willing. Ah. If you think that I am taking advantage of you, I still have an elder sister and a younger sister. Zhang Xian was lost for words. The hell? You are already 60 years old with half your foot in the grave. Your younger and elder sister, how unusual and hardcore a taste do I need for that? It took a long while before the chaos settled down and everyone got back to the main topic at hand. My question is this. The main ingredient of an antidote pill, poison-neutralizing grass, is too weak and it often burns to ashes before it can reach the bottom of the cauldron to mix with the other medicinal herbs. Where did I go wrong? Poison-neutralizing grass isn't resistant to high heat. This is something commonly agreed upon by everyone else. If you throw it directly into the cauldron, it is inevitable that it would burn up. However, you can soak it in purple sun water for 3 days before using it in your forging. Not only will it not burn up, its medicinal property will also be unleashed to the maximum. I would like to ask, why is it that I often find my breath getting irregular when I am forging pills? That is easy to answer. After getting back on track, the remaining part was simple. Most of the questions could be solved using the knowledge Zhang Xian had gained from the basic tier book collection vault. If he really found himself at a loss, he would then proceed to get the other party to forge pills and utilize the Library of Heaven's Path to analyze the mistakes in his process. An hour later, he finally finished answering the questions of the 3 remaining apothecaries. Alright, now that all 10 apothecaries have admitted defeat, I hereby declare the winner of this pill debate as Zhang Xian. From today onwards, he will be a new 1-star apothecary of the Apothecary Guild. When the pill debate came to an end, Cheng announced the results and handed a 1-star badge and a robe over. This is the emblem of an apothecary. With this, no matter which apothecary guild you go to, you will enjoy special privileges when purchasing pills. Okay. Taking the 2 items from Cheng's hands, he casually placed them into his storage ring. Everyone had guessed that there was some incredible figure guiding him from behind, so they weren't really surprised by that storage ring in his possession. Besides, being an apothecary was a lucrative occupation. The storage ring, which could cost millions, might be exorbitant, but it was nothing much to them. Guild leader Yang, where is the advanced tier book collection vault? I would like to take a look. Zhang Xian asked. His main reason for undergoing the apothecary examination was to go to the book collection vault. Thus, the first thing he decided to do upon becoming an official apothecary was to head there to take a look. I'll take you there. After which, Cheng first walked out of the room and Zhang Xian followed closely behind him. Before he could travel far, the voice of the previous apothecary rang out behind him. Apothecary Zhang Xian, do consider it for a bit. If my elder and younger sister won't do, I have an aunt too. She isn't married yet. Zhang Xian staggered and tears streamed down his cheeks. Your aunt is old enough to be my great-grandmother. Chapter 123, Solution found the Apothecary Guild's advanced tier book collection vault wasn't too far away from where they conducted the pill debate. It barely took a few steps before they arrived there. There are a total of 10 official apothecaries in the Tianxian Kingdom Apothecary Guild. Most of them only head here to pore through these books upon encountering truly difficult questions. As such, this place tends to be quite deserted. Anyways, feel free to pick out any book that you would like to read. Cheng introduced, pushing open the doors. Zhang Xian voiced his acknowledgement before heading into the room. Even though there weren't too many official apothecaries in Tianxian Kingdom's Apothecary Guild, the books inside were more than a few. It might be unable to compare to the hundreds of thousands of books in the basic tier book collection vault, but there was still more than 10,000 books inside. They were densely packed in a dozen or so bookshelves. Feel free to take a look. If there's anything you are unable to comprehend, you can ask me. I will be in that room. Cheng casually pointed. Looks like I have troubled guild leader Yang. Zhang Xian nodded his head with a smile. There is nothing troublesome about this. You are an official apothecary now, and I will likely have quite a few questions I will need to consult you on in the future. Cheng chuckled and walked out of the vault. He knew that the other party had his own goals and secrets for coming to this book collection vault, so it's inappropriate for him to linger around here. I should start looking around. Upon his departure, Zhang Xian cracked a grin. Walking over to the first rack, he started to flip through the books. He would have to spend a significant amount of time to find that specific book. Since he was bound to be delayed in any case, he might as well copy all of these books into the Library of Heaven's Path. It would be more convenient to look through them in the future, and he could learn more on pill forging as well. Walala. Walala. The flipping of pages echoed in the advanced tier book collection vault. After a period of time, Zhang Xian stopped and his eyes gleamed. Indeed, the book I wanted to browse through is here. Diligence paid off. Eventually, he found the book regarding unique constitutions and the pills required to awaken them. Tianxian Year 373, Emperor Shenling's daughter, Princess Shenqiu, had pure Yin body. She managed to awaken it upon consuming a grade 3 pill. Unravel Yin pill. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. He continued to browse through it. Tianxian Year 126, there was an individual who had emperor bloodline. He was unable to awaken it using pills. He eventually awakened it by smearing the blood of the colossal rhinoceros beast on his body. However, the probability of success is extremely low. In another book, he found the method to awaken the emperor bloodline. I need to see whether it's right or wrong. He copied the 2 lines onto a piece of paper and with a jolt of his mind, the contents and flaws of the paper he just copied appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. Pure Yin body can be awakened using the Unravel Yin pill. Flaws, it can only awaken around 10% of the constitution, thus it is incapable of unleashing the full strength of the constitution. Emperor bloodline can be awakened using the blood of the colossal rhinoceros beast. Flaws, it can only awaken around 10% of the constitution, thus it is incapable. Upon seeing the flaws written in the library, Zhang Xian was taken aback. Only 10%? Previously, he thought that he would be able to fully awaken their constitution through the use of pills. He didn't think that it could only awaken 10%. However, 10% is sufficient. Zhang Xian smiled. Unique constitutions were extremely powerful. Even if it was just awakened by 10%, it was enough to increase one's cultivation by leaps and bounds. It was more than sufficient for a mere freshman tournament. Now, I have to look for a grade 3 Unravel Yin pill and the blood of the colossal rhinoceros beast. Upon confirming what he needed, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He finished flipping through all the books before walking over to Ouyang Cheng's room. He was the head of the Apothecary Guild. Most probably, he was the only one who could obtain these 2 items for him. After flipping through the books in the Apothecary Guild's advanced tier book collection vault, Zhang Xian had a rough idea on what Wang Ying and Lu Yang required, and he could buy it along with the other things. Apothecary Zhang Xian. Upon seeing Zhang Xian walk over, Ouyang Cheng hurriedly stood up. Guild leader Ouyang, there is something I need to trouble you for. Zhang Xian cut to the chase and spoke of his purpose here. I would like to purchase a few items and I may require your assistance. Oh. What do you need? It shouldn't be a problem as long as it is something the guild has. Ouyang Cheng nodded his head. I need an Unravel Yin pill, a Meridian Rejuvenation pill, a portion of colossal rhinoceros blood, and a portion of body nourishment medicinal solution. Zhang Xian said. Meridian Rejuvenation pill was for Lu Yang's consumption. After practicing a battle technique beyond his cultivation realm, the meridians in his right arm had withered and required the Meridian Rejuvenation pill to heal it. On the other hand, the body nourishment medicinal solution was for Wang Ying. Her legs had yet to fully recover top form and she was still unable to fight like a normal cultivator. As such, she required the nourishment of this kind of medicinal solution to hasten her recovery. It should be easy to obtain Meridian Rejuvenation pill and body nourishment medicinal solution, and I can help you look for it. However, the Unravel Yin pill and the blood of the colossal rhinoceros beast. This is slightly trickier. Ouyang Cheng didn't expect that he would require so many things and a deep frown appeared on his face. Trickier? Is it possible to obtain it? Zhang Xian looked at him. After going through so much trouble to look for the solution to unlocking his student's constitution, he would truly be infuriated if he was unable to obtain the items required for them at this point. We don't have these items in our guild. However, if I send in an application to headquarters, it should be possible to obtain them. Ouyang Cheng said. That's great. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. However, Ouyang Cheng frowned once more. The headquarters are simply too far away. Even if they got another branch from the other, closer kingdoms to send it, it would still take a minimum of 10 days. 10 days? Zhang Xian was surprised for a moment. Then, he recovered and continued, that's fine by me too. If it has to take 10 days, then so be it. There were still 14 days until the freshman tournament. Things might get a little pressing if it arrived 10 days later, but he should still be able to finish his preparations in time. Alright, I will send in the application to headquarters now then. You can obtain it within 10 days. As for the Meridian Rejuvenation Pill and Body Nourishment Medicinal Solution, I can get them for you right now. Guild leader Ouyang smiled. Okay, I will be inconveniencing you then. Zhang Xian nodded his head. How much do the 4 of them cost? Do I pay for all of them now or do I pay when they are all here? After inheriting Yang Mo's fortune, he had more than 1 million gold coins in his possession. He could be considered a wealthy man in the capital now. Purchasing a few medicinal herbs to raise his students' fighting prowess didn't matter much to him. At the same time, he could also show how noble he was as a teacher. It's just a small sum of money. Am I a stingy person? Meridian Rejuvenation Pill and Body Nourishment Medicinal Fluid aren't too expensive. Totaling both of them up, it is around 400,000 gold coins. Ouyang Cheng calculated for a moment before continuing, the Unravel-Een Pill and Colossal Rhinoceros Blood would be slightly more expensive. The former is one of the more advanced grade, 3 pills whereas the Colossal Rhinoceros Beast is a primordial beast, a whole level higher than that of savage beasts. Right now, you are an apothecary, so you are entitled to special privileges. I can sell them to you at a discount. The Unravel-Een Pill will cost around 20 million gold coins whereas the blood of the Colossal Rhinoceros Beast will cost 3 million. How about this, I will lower the price down for you. 23 million will suffice. Ouyang Yang calculated for a moment before saying. Upon noticing the abrupt silence in the atmosphere, he lifted his head to take a look. Unknowingly, Zhang Xian was already 10 meters away from him. Waving his hands constantly, he said, I'm just casually asking about those things, don't take it as real. Ouyang Cheng couldn't even choke out a response.